Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turf Wars. Uh, it's been a pretty grim couple of weeks. Um, so as regular viewers might know, I wasn't here last week, and that is because last Wednesday in the UK we had a horrific court ruling, and it kind of broke me. Um, and I think it broke a lot of people watching this. Basically, most of today is going to be about the UK Supreme Court ruling. Um, I thought first we'd just kind of summarize what it is, and I would talk like about how I've handled it and what I felt and stuff in the wake of it, just so anyone who isn't in the UK or any cis people who are watching know what at least I'm going through. And I don't think I'm an outlier. I think from talking to a lot of trans people, I think I have a fairly middle of the road average reaction to this. Um, then I thought we could talk about some of the stuff that's happened around it. So we can talk about the EHRC, we can talk about JK Rowling, of course. Talk about what some of the various organisations have said, what Labour have said, the government in power at the moment. Then we'll cover some other gender critical bullshit going on, and then we're going to have a good section on what you can do, and also what I can do, what everyone watching can do to fight back against this in multiple different ways. Because this isn't the end of anything. If anything, it's like the beginning of something, which might seem exhausting, but I think you get a lot of energy from things like this. So yeah, that's what I thought we could do today. Maybe we can have. I don't know. I also want to talk to chat a bit about how everyone in chat is doing. But I feel like I want to just say what I'm feeling first, selfishly. Sorry, everyone. And then maybe we can have a little discussion afterwards before we dive into all of the topics. Yeah. So I'm just going to start on the first thing, just to summarize. So yeah, I wasn't here last Wednesday live streaming, and I've had a bit of a break from uploading YouTube videos because the UK had a Supreme Court ruling, and I was very stressed about the ruling. Even talking about it now, I can feel like the stress coming back up. I was very stressed about this ruling for months. Pretty much as soon as it was clear what was going on, I was stressed about it, and realistically, we could have had a number of different possible outcomes, and we've pretty much had the worst case one, or the reason, like within reason, worst case possible result from this. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the UK, and the case was the Scottish government had made some new laws in Scotland saying public bodies need to have a certain quota of women in their like boards and organizations and stuff. I think it's 50%, I'm not certain. But anyway, the idea of that is obviously to, and this is important, to combat sexism, because if you look at politics and like CEOs and boardrooms and stuff around the world, it's mainly men. And that isn't because men are more competent, it's because of centuries of misogyny. And so fighting back against that, whether you necessarily think quotas are the best way to do it, at least the motivation behind that is quite good. And the Scottish government said, right, we're gonna do some quotas, and that's gonna just include all women. And then a hate group called For Women Scotland, which is one of the many like interconnected, incestuous, gender critical groups, like anti-trans activist groups in the UK, sued the Scottish government and said you shouldn't be allowed to include trans women. So obviously, if they are, if a organization is in a position where it's having to meet a quota, so it's already having to like battle against sexism within the organization, so they're going to be hiring the bare minimum number of women in that situation. Why would they ever hire a trans woman if they didn't contribute towards the quota? Of course, there are so few trans women in any of these positions anyway. There's like no trans women in government because we've all been forced out, and the UK is incredibly transphobic. But this was just a legal case to resolve that. However, the laws that was built on was like, how UK law works is it's very different to like how American law works. For example, the UK is like built on centuries of decisions and rulings and new laws that governments have brought in and stuff, and they all kind of like, it's almost like you're building something out of clay over thousands of years, and you like stick a new bit on, and some of it comes off and some of it covers over previous bits, and you're like constantly making a new ever-growing sculpture. So they were actually resolving decades of laws, but the most important ones were the Equality Act from 2010, which is the most recent part of the legislation, and then the Gender Recognition Act from 2004, and then a bunch of other like sex and gender regulations from 1999, 1975 and previous. And this, they originally took the Scottish government to court and they lost. And then they appealed it and they lost. And they lost like quite convincingly both times. The judges basically just said, well, how the law is written just says trans women should be covered by these laws. Like that's literally just the word of the law. But as soon as it got to the Supreme Court, I started feeling a bit more nervous about it. When it was at lower courts, I wasn't so nervous. It seemed like it would have a more fair trial. Obviously, I was more nervous because when the Supreme Court rules on something, it overrules everything else. It's like the ultimate authority, basically, on law, apart from when the government changes law. So, but also what was worrying me about it is a number of people asked to be involved in this court case. Obviously, For Women Scotland were involved because they're the ones like initiating the case, and obviously the Scottish government are involved because they're the ones like defending the law that they've tried to, or the regulation that they've tried to create. But like a whole number of gender critical hate groups also said, we want to be heard in this case, and the court accepted all of them. So like Sex Matters were there, LGBT Alliance were there, like a bunch of other like Scottish anti-trans groups were there, and they were all just allowed to be present and bring their lawyers and write their bits and be considered by the court. And no trans people were allowed at all. So this whole big super important case, which only affected trans people as well, remember, like this was just a debate about what rights trans people have. The whole thing was just a discussion in a room. I mean, from me in another country, because I live in England and this was being held in Scotland. We're kind of all one country, we're kind of separate countries, but you know, this decision's being made between a government which isn't my government and a hate group which doesn't even live in the same country as me. A whole group of hate groups, all cis people, not a single trans person involved, and it was just already springing up red flags. JK Rowling donated loads of money. Who knows what's gone on behind closed doors? But in the end, the Supreme Court announced that they were fully overturning the previous court decisions, the lower court and the appeals court, completely going back on that. And in a unanimous decision, they decided to basically remove trans people from the Equality Act when it comes to like protections against sexism, which is really bleak. There's loads of other very specific legal things which go on here, and it's very difficult to explain even to British trans people who know what's going on exactly what this covers, because we don't have just one like legal definition of sex that covers everything. We didn't before this, and now we still don't. We don't have just one set of like regulation which covers all these things. This specifically covers the Equality Act, and it doesn't cover things like what toilets you can use. It doesn't cover what's on your passport. It doesn't cover like a whole bunch of things. And also, you might have seen various like news organizations saying, but trans people are still protected by the Equality Act. And that's true to some extent, in that trans people were protected for being trans, and also women were protected for being women. Like, if you were trans and gay, you would also be protected for being gay. If you were trans and of a minority religion, you would also be protected for that, for example, because the Equality Act, you can be covered by multiple of these things at once. And they've basically just said trans people are covered for specific discrimination against trans people. However, we will see that that actually sounds like it's completely worthless, but they're not covered. So, for example, I wouldn't be covered for any protections for anything sexism targeted at me. Only something that can clearly be like separated out to being transphobia. But obviously those two things are so intertwined that it'd be very easy to argue that one was another thing and then argue out of it, and then it would undermine trans people's rights. So this is definitely a serious step back for trans rights in the UK, like very major. But it isn't like we've turned into North Korea overnight or something. We have gone from being one of the safer countries for trans people in terms of paper rights in like the world or in Europe, to not one of the safer ones. We've probably jumped down the global ranking quite a lot. And that is just in terms of paper rights. And when I say that, I mean like what kind of in theory legal things the law will back you up on. Obviously you could have loads of paper rights, but if the society is violent towards you, then it's meaningless. And you could have no paper rights, but if everyone treats you fairly, then it doesn't matter. But obviously those two things are linked. Anyway, enough of what's happened. We will go into it more later on. There'll be more videos out in the week about this. But yeah, when this ruling was coming up, they announced that it was going to come out on Wednesday. I didn't know what time. I was just so terrified of fearing like the worst case. Even if not, like, this is the worst, one of the worst case rulings, where they basically said trans women have no protections. They could have ruled a slightly more complicated ruling where they said, oh, it doesn't apply this time, it does apply this time, or they could have been like a neutral ruling where they're just like, well, we encourage the government to sort this out and we're not going to do anything. There could have been a positive one, but I was predicting and suspecting a negative result. Yeah, so I was feeling like really sick leading up to this, like ill, super stressed. I asked my well, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know what I was going to do if the result was negative. I just thought, like, am I going to have a breakdown? I just don't know. So I called my mum, who is like super supportive, who I really love a lot, and who loves me, and just said, like, what the hell am I even going to do with this? And she very kindly came over to my house and sat with me, basically waiting for this to happen. And yeah, and the result was terrible, and I basically just cried all day and hugged my mum and just felt like I had no idea what to do. I don't think that I'm the only trans person who did that. I've talked to, I mean, I said on Blue Sky, if anyone's welcome to reach out to me. I had so many DMs, probably less than 100, probably more than 50 people DM'd me, UK trans people, saying something similar. Some people said they had to go home from work. Some people said they had a breakdown. One lady said that their colleagues called an ambulance for them because they just kind of collapsed. yeah, it was pretty grim. I yeah, I didn't really sleep much the night before. I didn't really sleep much that night either. So that's why I cancelled the show last week, because I thought if I try and do this show, I wouldn't know what to say. Because I hadn't had any time to like collect my thoughts and emotions. I thought I'd probably just cry on air the whole time, which I just don't think would have been helpful for anyone. Um, but also I didn't think I could really provide any analysis or information or pushback. I just needed to cry. And I think some people are good in times of crisis and some people aren't, and I don't necessarily think that I am. Or maybe I'm good in certain types of crisis but not in other types of crisis. I'm not good when I'm late for a flight, but I'm very good when like the dinner has gone totally wrong and I need to rescue it. Like, they are different types of crisis. I'm not good when I'm worrying about my human rights. It yeah, it just gave it I did have multiple panic attacks in the day. I just cried the whole time. Felt really just grim. Since then, it's only actually been 1 week, though it seems like it's been a long time. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened, but my emotions have started like distilling, I guess, or I've been able to make sense of them more. And also understanding the like rational side and the arguments more, to like work out work out what I think and what I need to say and all that kind of stuff. Let's just lose the headphones for now. Don't know if we're listening to anything today anyway. Yeah, so I'm feeling less lost now, but still I think the main two emotions that I'm feeling at the moment are just fear, like raw fear of the future. I do feel like anything is possible from here. I feel like it is possible that there is such a backlash that nothing more happens, or even this is the start of the pendulum swinging back and we fight and get these rights back. That's possible. I also do think that I'm not going to say equally possible, but it's also not impossible that this is like the first major domino, and then it's, they could be arresting trans people for using the toilets and banning our healthcare and all kinds of stuff. Like what's happened in some other countries, for example, Hungary. Hungary had a similar incident to this, and it's just got worse and worse. And they've been like arresting doctors that have been giving trans healthcare to people and stuff now. So I don't know. I don't want to fearmonger those things. I'm not making a prediction about any of that. I think that we aren't powerless, and I think that there's a lot of anger coming from this. So we need to like capture that and do something, which is what we're going to talk about later. But I think that fear is like the half of what I'm feeling, and particularly like in the night, I finding that I can go to sleep okay, and then I wake up 3 hours later like having a panic attack, and where in the night, I don't know if anyone else is like this, but my brain just like goes a million miles an hour, just conjuring up the worst possible scenarios. At night, it's just much worse. But on the other hand, I think equally as much, literally like 50-50, the other like emotion I'm feeling is defiance. And those two are very like, they're almost like mutually exclusive emotions, because when you're feeling terrified, it's hard to feel like you can stand up for yourself and other people. It's hard to feel like you can do anything. It's very easy to like want to cower away and just like give up, and that stops the feeling of defiance. But when the defiance comes, that like crushes the fear, because it's like, well, fuck you, I'm not gonna get crushed by this. I'm not going to like comply. I'm not gonna do this. And that like keeps the fear down. So it like it's very hard to feel them both at once, but I think I am feeling them both at once. It's just that it's hard to like only one's expressed at a time, I guess. And what I mean by defiance is, obviously there's been calls by the anti-trans hate movement, and the government, like basically all the major political parties, the media, like everything, have been saying that they want to ban trans people from public spaces, ban trans healthcare, like remove trans people's passports, all of those kinds of things. And like the idea that they might try and ban me from the toilet at work or from service stations, like, no, fuck you. That's never going to happen. I am never going to use the men's toilets in the UK, like, never. I'm not going to, like, if they try and make healthcare illegal, then I'm not going to, like, stop taking healthcare. Get fucked. Like, I'm gonna carry on. And obviously then there's the little voice of fear in my mind, like, what happens if they start arresting people? What happens if they send you to a men's prison? What happens if they start injecting you with testosterone or something? None of those things are out of the question. Like, they have happened in other places, but I don't think we're near enough to that in the UK that it's a major concern right now. It's the kind of thing you have to constantly reevaluate. But I am feeling defiant right now that if I don't think my work is going to do anything about this ruling. I don't think they care. But if, an HR person was to come to me and say, oh, we've changed the work guidelines in result of this court case, we now want you to stop using the women's toilets, I would just say, well, no, obviously not. I'm not going to do that. Who do you think I am? And then go back to my desk and carry on doing my job and get fucked. Like that, I'm not abiding with that. But that, importantly, that isn't what the law says. That hasn't come out as a result of this court case. We are still protected in law, in some ways, to carry on existing and living our life. It's just removed a big support and has obviously opened up the floodgates of what's possible next for all of the like hate groups and stuff. So I think that what I would say to other people is, if you're just feeling fear, I think it's okay to have that for a time. I think you need to mourn. I think you need to like grieve and feel terrified and curl up and just cry. Like I did that. I don't think anyone's above that. I don't think you should judge yourself for doing that. Or if you're judging me for doing that, then like, I don't care. But I think that you can't do that forever. You can't let them win on some clearly illegitimate, bullshit, corrupt court case ruling, which like overrode the letter of the law. They haven't won everything. They've made one like change to one act in law which can be undone. And they want you to feel terrified. Like, I know that admitting that I'm terrified, there'll be a bunch of gender critical people posting clips of this and laughing at it and stuff, and like getting off to the fact that they've caused all this fear and suffering, because that's what they want to do. But like, I just think it's important to be honest. But it's also important to know that is what they want, and you can't let them just do that to you. Like, fuck them. That they are worthless people. So if you're struggling, what I always find easier is to try and fight for someone else. It's much easier to defend someone else, like other trans people, than it is yourself. And when you get that kind of like just imagine all these horrible gender critical people, they've taken away your rights, they're laughing at you, they're enjoying your suffering. It can feel very isolating. But if they're doing that to someone else, like, are you just going to stand there watching these bullies like try and ruin someone else's life? No. Like, you're going to stand up to them. And so then just use that energy. And also another thing, like, people have, it's like almost like a community meme at this point, like, if you can't even defend someone else, exist out of spite. Like, stand up to them out of spite. These are horrible, horrible people, and you being happy and standing up to them and being defiant and saying no when they try and control you upsets them, and it's good to upset them because they are horrible people. So yeah, I think you can do it. I have done it. I am not free of the fear at all. It's like 50-50 at the moment, but it's a lot better than it was even 1 week ago. And I think that it's gonna hopefully emotionally within me get better, at least in the short term. And I think that you should know that you can do that too. This isn't the end of anything. We've all, like, when they passed the Gender Recognition Act and the Equality Act, that was the end. The gender criticals lost, and then now they flipped it back, and now it's the end, and they've won. But actually, it's not, because I'm still here, you're still here. There's more people now than ever aware of the horrors of what are happening. Like, I've had so many people who have before politely asked about trans rights, what's going on. I tell them, and they're like, God, that sounds terrible. And then that's the end of the conversation. I've been like messaging me and saying, like, out of nowhere, I've had like people I barely even talk to like stop me and just being like, I'm really sorry to hear what's happened, like, I support you and stuff. So like, more people are engaged over this. It's a bigger thing, so more people are, and a lot of people, this is like, last week was literally like the first day of them caring about trans rights and having it as an issue on their radar. And a lot of the gender criticals will take their foot off the gas now because they think they have won and they've defeated trans people, and that's the end of it. And obviously, like, the thing is with us, that one of the many differences between this and why it's not like a both sides thing, when we lose a big thing like this, it affects our lives in a way that affects us, like, we're constantly aware of it. It affects us every single day. And so you're constantly in a position where you're like motivated to change something. Like, you want to stand up to it. You want to say no. You're telling people this is affecting my life negatively all the time. For the gender criticals, it doesn't affect them at all. It doesn't matter to them at all. Once they get bored with it, they'll be like, oh, we won. I don't see anything about trans people anymore. And the only reason they saw anything about trans people before is because they were obsessed with us. And if they move on, they'll just think they've won. And then if the rights change back and they didn't read about it, it wouldn't affect their life at all. So, you know, for them to stay engaged, they are more like frenzy level, frantically engaged than we are ever. Because hating people is something humans like to do, and for some reason it like consumes some people. But you can't keep it up forever. Like, I think even the most demented haters grow out of it a bit, like get bored with it, or it completely destroys them. But yeah. So this is unfortunately the start of a new sad chapter, or the new chapter which has starts off sad and scary, but it's not like the end of anything. It's literally like end of book 1, start book 2, day 1, we're starting again. And that you might be like, fuck me. We've been fighting for like however many years. I mean, I personally been at this for like over 10 years now, and I'm exhausted, and now we've reached day 1. Like, what are you on about? But yeah, it's not, I think you need to like find a way of drawing a line and understanding that like the battlefield has changed, and now we need to try new strategies, get new people, but not like, oh, the old way has failed, we've got to reinvent everything. More like, things have changed both negatively and positively for us. There are more people aware of this than ever. There are bigger protests than ever. We need to capture that energy, be part of it, and then start going. So yeah, that's what's happened. That's where I've been, and that is what I think. Let me know in the comments and in chat now how you're doing. Yeah, I've been trying to just talk to as many trans people as I can, even if it's like, you know, I had tens and tens of people DM me on Just Blue Sky, and I tried to reply to everyone, with at least acknowledgement that I'd read what they say. You know, that's what I try and do in YouTube comments too. So anyway, live chat. How's everyone doing? That was a long introduction to today. We've got a bunch of stuff to cover, but I just thought we'll see how everyone's doing. I saw some people saying that they had a really bad last Wednesday. Yeah, hard week. Yeah, me too. It's been pretty grim. Yeah, I've seen. We're gonna cover some other countries and how they've responded to it. Can I bestow a sword upon you? Oh, is that to make you a Twitch moderator? Do you have to say hello in Twitch? How do I do this? Yeah, I probably can do this. I would guess. Give me one sec, chat. How do I do this? No, not Prime Gaming. Nah. Sword bestowed. There you go. Hopefully that's worked. I don't know. We'll see. If not, I'll talk to you after. Anyway, oscillating between being afraid and being angry. Yeah, that's how I feel. I'm getting less emotional though, and more driven to action and making people aware of what's happened. Yeah, that I think that exactly sums up how I'm feeling. You fight tirelessly for us, Katie. I'm so sorry you've had such a rough time. Yeah. I'm sad, fearful, and tearful. Feel like my identity was ripped away. Okay. They haven't ripped your identity away. If that's how you feel, I'm not telling you you're wrong. But I'm telling you that they can't do that. Like, what your identity? I don't like all this, like, your identity is personal to you and you, or like this thing that I'm too like skeptic brain to come out with anything like that. But how people in your close personal life interact with you and how you see yourself is in the control of you and them, the people who love you. It's not in the control of some fucking bigoted shitheads in a court that you've never been to. It's not in the control of J.K. Rowling or any of these like obsessed freaks. And like they cannot stop you transitioning and being happy with your transition and having friends and family who love you. Like they cannot do that. I think that it's very easy to feel like these authorities like do have a say on who you are, but they don't. Like, well, in a way, like I kind of feel like the Supreme Court has no value in my mind at all now. Like I don't respect it. Obviously, it's a completely nonsense ruling. So now they're worthless to me. I mean, it's like, you know, if NASA came out and said like, I have a lot of respect for NASA as an organization, and if NASA comes out and says like Pluto isn't a planet anymore because the definitions don't make sense and stuff, I'm like, okay, I respect their opinions. Let me read about this. I understand it. If NASA comes out and says like gay people are inferior, I'll be like, oh, well, they're just completely worthless as an organization now, and I don't trust them on anything. Like, it's bullshit. And that's kind of what the Supreme Court like now. Like, I have no respect for them. They don't respect. I mean, they don't respect trans people enough to even include us in a discussion about our futures and our rights. So, and they'll come out with these like nonsense, contradictory garbage. So what? Don't give them any respect at all. They can't like demand respect from you. The state can obviously enact violence upon you in their name, but if you can steer clear of that, then they fuck them, worthless. But yeah, I'm sorry that everyone else is also struggling. If you're a cis person watching this and you have a trans friend, reach out to them and send them some love. If I am the only trans person you know and you don't know me directly, you're just like someone who follows me on YouTube or Blue Sky or something, then I've had enough support. I have a great support network around me, some really good friends, really good family. There's a bunch of trans people replying in the comments to this and to my Blue Sky post randomly send one of them some random support. It does make a difference. Like there are trans people out there watching this who don't have any family and don't have a good strong support network, and even just hearing the goodness of random strangers just makes your day different. It just gives you more, to give them more ability to be defiant rather than just afraid. So right, let's move on to some stuff. Let's talk about some things. Let's do a segment, because we are 40 minutes in and we've done not much yet. So we are going to still carry on talking about the Supreme Court ruling. So the Supreme Court has basically said that what they have actually said is that the term sex in the Equality Act doesn't include trans people whose legal sex, it doesn't include trans women whose legal sex is female. They've said it only includes biological sex. Obviously their intent there, or the intent at least of the gender critical movement, is to define it by birth sex, not biological sex, but by the sex you were when you were born, or at least the sex that the doctor thought you were when you were born, in most cases just by looking at your genitals, and that's it. But they've made this like big complicated legal argument and basically said, well, this is how we're going to interpret the law from now on. But there is a number of things that legally are dubious about this. And I'm not a lawyer, and I couldn't say the specifics of how law works, but what we can do is we can say that several of the people involved in actually writing the law have come out and said the Supreme Court is just flat out wrong on how they've interpreted this. So, for example, here we've got a civil servant. So a civil servant is just someone who works for the government to like do a bunch of stuff, in this case to help draft laws. And this lady here, Melanie Field, oversaw the Equalities Act drafting and passage through Westminster in 2010. She says the clear premise was to give trans and biological women, we're going to do a whole fucking thing about this biological women phrase. The clear premise was to give trans and cis women the same sex discrimination rights. So the intent of the people writing the actual legislation that the Supreme Court has just ruled on was the opposite of the way the Supreme Court has ruled, and would have been in our favor. And obviously that, like, if you read the laws, that is exactly how it comes across. In order to remove this interpretation, they've had to do some real, like, weird legal wrangling and bullshit. They haven't just read the law straight as it's written, which is sus, I've got to say. So yeah, Melanie Field, who oversaw its drafting, said the legislation was meant to give trans people with the gender recognition certificates the same legal status as cis people. She said that treating trans women with GRCs as women in relation to sex discrimination protections was the clear premise of the policy and legal instructions to the official who drafted the bill. There are likely to be unintended consequences of this very significant change of interpretation from the basis on which the legislation was drafted and considered by Parliament. So also, not only was it the intent of the people writing it, and obviously for the last 15 years, how most people have interpreted it, it's also when Parliament themselves was debating it, the premise on which they were making the decision whether to pass into law or not was that trans women would be protected the same as cis women. So if they had known what the court was this Supreme Court ruling was going to be at the time, perhaps they wouldn't have voted it through with that specific wording and they would have changed it. But then if they had done different wording in the past, then the Supreme Court likely would have tried to find some other sneaky legal bullshit to get around the intent and spirit of and letter of the law, basically. One of the things that I really want to point out in all of this ruling is people like the BBC and Keir Starmer are constantly saying this has brought clarity, it's brought clarity. But anyone who's involved in this, like trans people who are actually affected by this, the people who wrote the law, anyone who's involved in any kind of discrimination issues, lawyers and stuff, are all saying this has made an absolute fucking mess. There's no, like, this has made things way more confusing. There's loads of stuff that's going to fall out of this, which is going to be contradictory. It's quite possibly going to lead to loads more court cases where no one's going to quite know what's going on, because like now there's a ruling which contradicts the law. Anyway, she says we need to understand what this change means, and it is a change, what this means for how the law provides for the appropriate treatment of natal and trans women and men on the whole range of contexts. So that is a civil servant basically saying this isn't how we wrote the law. So Joe Malm here from Good Law Project has pointed out or reported on the minister who introduced the Gender Recognition Act in 2003 made it clear. So just to get the order of things that happened here, the Equality Act 2010 is the most recent, obviously happening in 2010. The Gender Recognition Act 2004 obviously happened before the Equality Act. So the Equality Act was built upon the Gender Recognition Act, which is why it's so ridiculous that the court has decided to interpret that the Equality Act wasn't built on top of the Gender Recognition Act. Like it's kind of nonsense, because when they were writing this law, they were writing it in the context of the Gender Recognition Act already existing. But the Equality Act 2010 wasn't just the first equalities law dealing with like sex and gender and stuff. There was a previous one and a previous one and a previous one. I'm not sure exactly all of these various regulations. I think there was 1999 one and 1975 one, probably some others. It's complicated. I'm not a law person. But the minister who introduced the Gender Recognition Bill in 2003, so that then became the 2004 law, made it clear that a transsexual person would have protection under the Sex Discrimination Act, the predecessor to the Equality Act, as a person of the acquired sex or gender. So here we have a quote from Lord Falconer saying, on the important issue of discrimination, Clause 9 makes it clear that a transsexual person would have the protection under the Sex Discrimination Act as a person of the acquired sexual gender. Once recognition has been granted, they will be able to claim the rights appropriate to that gender. So that's like a core part of the previous ruling. So here we had a load of regulations for how to deal with sexism for men and women. And then there was a huge hoo-ha about trans people, and it went all the way to the European Court of Justice and Court of Human Rights, and they ruled in favour of trans people, and it came back to the UK, and they had to make a new law saying trans people could change sex legally. Like that's something pushed down upon us from Europe. And at the time, they then built upon the sex discrimination laws they already had and said, oh, we intend for the Gender Recognition Act to allow trans people to legally get protections. And then when they built the Equality Act on top of those, they were merging those things and updating them. And the Supreme Court has somehow managed to dodge past how the Equality Act was written and how it was intended by the people writing it and how it was interpreted by the people who voted on it at the time. And then also revert what was done in the Gender Recognition Act, ignore what they were saying in that, and then ignore what was going on before. It's made a whole fucking mess of it all. So it was reflected in the explanatory notes to the Gender Recognition Act when published. We might as well read this part. Subsection 1 states the fundamental proposition that once a full GRC is issued to an applicant, that person's gender becomes for all purposes the acquired gender. So the applicant who was born male would, in law, become a woman for all purposes. This is literally the letter of the law as it stood until last Wednesday. She would, for example, be entitled to protection as a woman under the Sex Discrimination Act 1975 and would be considered to be female for all purposes. So it's not, this isn't they didn't write it very well and it could be interpreted multiple ways and actually it's quite confusing and they've needed to add clarity. It's literally the letter of the law, the people who wrote it and the people who voted on it said trans women will be legally women, and then the Supreme Court's just been nah. Yeah, and they basically just dismissed it all. They haven't really addressed it. But then also just on them just totally dismissing previous laws and the letter of the law as it's written and the intent of the people who wrote it, and not including trans people in the thing. Here, India Willoughby is pointing out that one of the judges, there was 5 judges. They weren't all men. I think 2 of them were women, 3 of them were men. One of the judges, she says, turns out is a deeply religious judge. And he headed the Commission on Same-Sex Relationships for the Church of Scotland, published in 2011, that concluded that gay and lesbian people should avoid same-sex relationships and ideally seek to rid of homosexual desires. The result of this was the church recommending gay and lesbians to avoid same-sex relationships. She says, was this really the right person to be put in charge of a case involving trans rights in the Supreme Court? What did they expect? Yeah, I mean, obviously, the legal institution is generally quite conservative. Lots of these judges are very old. It takes a long time to go through the ranks and become a Supreme Court judge. They're not going to have someone who's like 15 or 20 or whatever years of experience. It's going to be like someone who's been there their entire life. So yeah, it's going to lean that way, and them being a homophobic person or a racist person, whatever they may or may not be, which I'm not accusing this judge of, obviously, because I live in the UK. But if they have prejudices, then they're not going to go away just because they write the laws to protect a group of people. You're not protected from the Supreme Court. So I'm not surprised that someone who recommended that gay people try and rid themselves of homosexual desires is also going to interpret the law to remove trans people's rights. That is very unsurprising. The fact that they seem to have specifically, purposefully crafted this kangaroo court situation to not involve a single trans person, to not hear any trans people's arguments or counter arguments to gender critical positions, it just seems like such a sham. And the fact that it's avoided the intent of the original law, gone against what the ministers were saying at the time, literally ignored the letter of the law, it's all just it just sounds some form of corruption to me. I'm not saying they were paid off at all. I'm saying that they are ideologically opposed to trans people, and so they don't really care about any of this. What power do we have? And it's not like the media is going to pressure them or the government is going to pressure them, because they are all anti-trans too. So it's a very easy win for them to just be like, nah, fuck it, trans people don't have rights anymore. So yeah, this isn't you have to remember that these courts are made up of humans with prejudices. And if you get, it's not hard to find 5 people in a room, especially in the legal profession, who are anti-LGBT. And if this was the case where they had a court case and they had equal representation between trans people and transphobes, and they had heard from arguments from both sides, and they had maybe talked to the people who wrote the laws to see what they were intending, and read the explainer notes without instantly dismissing them, and then concluded against trans rights, obviously I would be upset and oppose it, but it would at least look more credible. I would feel like it would be a decision that would garner some kind of respect, at least when everyone's involved. But when it's so clearly some garbage setup where we weren't even allowed to be involved in our own rights, and the people who wrote it weren't, they ignore the letter of the law. I don't know, I just don't respect this result. It just seems like garbage to me. Obviously, they have the power and I don't have the power. What I think is absolutely meaningless. But I do think that all of these institutions are just entirely built on trust, and like what we're seeing in the USA at the moment with their Supreme Court, and their whole fucking government, is that if you start doing things that are clearly unjust and like appear corrupt to people, then people will lose respect in those institutions, and that damages not just those institutions but the whole country. And the fact that trans people in the UK are so powerless and ignored and maligned and don't have much of a voice means that there won't be, this isn't going to cause huge institutional damage to the Supreme Court in a way that will like destroy it or anything. But it's just like a crack for a lot of people where they're like, oh, the Supreme Court ruled this and they did this kind of set up fake bullshit trial where no trans people were involved. Ooh, maybe our Supreme Court is garbage too. Like, you hear stuff about the American Supreme Court all the time, you're like, oh man, these judges seem like just insane. But you never really hear about the UK Supreme Court one, so you just kind of, well, you do sometimes, but you just kind of feel like it's just chugging along and dodging politics a bit, and now you're like, oh, okay. And obviously this is me from quite a privileged position where I haven't had my rights already resolved by the Supreme Court. And maybe if you're a part of a group who has, you've already realized they're corrupt or not. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, this wasn't a fair case where everyone got to hear their side of the argument. No one could argue that. Yeah. So, what's everyone saying? The US courts are looking better than ours right now. Trump is just ignoring them. I don't know whose courts are looking worse. I don't know whose country's looking worse. I do feel like America has maybe got further to fall and is falling apart faster. But we're already further down the ramp on some things and not as far down on other things. And if America starts putting the brakes on right now, they might not fall as far as we already are. I don't know. It's hard to say. But I don't respect the American Supreme Court in the slightest. I think that it's a bunch of fucking wackos. And when you hear that something is going to the Supreme Court, I just think, oh, they're just going to rule in favour of the most evil and insane position possible. I never used to think that about the UK Supreme Court, and now that is how it feels. Anyway, talking of, in my opinion, appearing seemingly corrupt, got to be careful, live in the UK, bullshit people in bullshit positions of power over trans people, we could talk about Baroness Falkner. So, in the UK, we have this organisation called the Equality and Human Rights Commission. The short name for it is the EHRC, which is very confusing because the European Court of Human Rights is the ECHR. Don't mix those two up. We have the EHRC, and they were set up by Labour at some point several governments ago. And the idea is they are not the government. They are like a government aligned institution who is meant to fight for people's human rights. And until I think the Boris Johnson government, they were ostensibly doing that to some degree. Meant to be like defending the Equality Act and jumping in when there are important legal cases and stuff. And then someone in the Conservative government from one of our last 4 prime ministers, when we had 4 prime ministers in 4 days or whatever, when we had all that bullshit going on, someone there replaced the head of this EHRC with an unelected baroness who has power over everyone in the UK despite never having been voted into that position, and will do for the rest of her life. And she was selected specifically because she hates trans people. So what the EHRC used to do is, if there was a case like this in the Supreme Court, they would step in and fight on behalf of trans people and try and get trans people involved. This time they were obviously fighting against trans people. And this isn't a case like of these Supreme Court judges. Obviously I feel like they've done a bullshit, immoral and wrong ruling, and at least one of them has clearly written some horrible stuff about gay people before. So I would say they're bullshit and I don't really respect them. I couldn't give you much other information on these people yet because I don't know about them, but also they haven't written like they've been like, as the way that Good Law Project put it, they've been like arrogant and dismissive. They don't seem to really care about how much damage they've done to trans rights. They just kind of like, oh, fuck it, whatever. So it'd be hard to say that they were like true believers, ideologically evil, horrific people. Probably just stuck up, bigoted judges that didn't give a fuck and don't really see trans people as human, whatever. Baroness Falkner is a like ideologically evil person who's very clearly hardline opposed to trans people's rights. And you can see it from what she's been saying from this. So as we've gone into some detail already, the Supreme Court ruling basically has just said, for the purposes of the Equality Act, trans women, well, maybe we'll get into this in a little bit, but probably have their rights removed, or at least most of them. Doesn't say anything about changing rooms or anything like that. But Baroness Falkner has been very keen to jump in straight away. So this says, Equality's boss outlines changes on toilets, changing rooms, and women's sport. So, trans women cannot use single-sex female toilets, changing rooms, or compete in women's sports. In light of the Supreme Court ruling, the head of Britain's Equalities Watchdog has said. So that's her, Baroness Falconer, Kishore Falconer. She said the ruling was enormously consequential. Like, she'd just been waiting for an excuse to write some guidance saying that all trans people should be banned from public. And, yeah, so it says here, Baroness Falconer has said organisations should be taking care to look at the very readable judgment to understand that it does brings clarity, helps them decide what they should do. Over changing rooms and toilets, Baroness Falconer said single-sex services like changing rooms must be based on biological sex. Something we haven't really said much yet. I probably should have said it earlier, but the Supreme Court said trans women's legal sex doesn't matter anymore. What's written on their birth certificate, what's written on their passport, what's written in their gender recognition certificate, doesn't matter, meaningless. All that matters is biological sex. They also said, we're not going to define biological sex because it's obvious. End of it. They just haven't bothered to define it. I mean, obviously we know that they couldn't. But I also think, like, it's like there's a reason that these hate groups like For Women Scott and Sex Matters haven't just given a clear definition of sex, which would be easy to do if one existed and would be like a core part of their messaging. The reason they haven't done it is because they know they can't, and they just hope that when they say, oh yeah, well, biological sex, they hope that people just assume what they learn in like primary school is probably true, and so they don't question it. But I mean, if they actually, like, they've now written into law it's your biological sex which determines these rights, but like, what's the definition of biological sex? Biological sex is genotype and phenotype, which means your genes and how they're expressed, and also your physical characteristics like genitals, gonads, breasts, facial hair, all of this kind of stuff. That is what biological sex is. It's like literally the material physical parts of you, which are different generally between men and women. So you could, I mean, I would say it is obvious and self-evident that I am female because phenotype sex, which covers like all the stuff you can see, is the stuff that affects discrimination, sexuality, prejudice, all of these kinds of things. And it's the things that affect your everyday life, and it's the stuff that's changed. You don't know what anyone's genotype is unless you do a test. Like, literally no one knows what their own one is, or anyone they've interacted with, or their partners, or the person they've just called a slur. They don't know what their genes are. So genes cannot be the most important part of biological sex. I mean, it's also like also for healthcare, it's not a major part. What's the major part is which organs you have and how your cells are functioning based on hormone levels. So it's definitely possible that someone who was discriminated against could just say, well, yeah, you've said based on biological sex, and my biological sex is female. They haven't given a definition that says otherwise. They can't give a definition that says otherwise. There's going to be nothing here. There's going to be no way for them to argue that. So it's definitely a hole in their argument. Anyway, it's a bit of a sidetrack. She says, and this is why I'm pointing out that she's such a ridiculous, like, clown of a person to be in this position. If a male person, here obviously just talking about trans women, is allowed to use a women's only service or facility, it isn't any longer single sex. So just a little recap. Trans women have been using women's spaces every single day in the UK across the entire country for longer than she's been alive. So her claim here is that the UK has never had single-sex services, which is obviously false, completely nonsense position. So this argument is completely stupid. Anyway, she says, then it becomes a mixed-sex space. Right, okay, yeah, so every women's toilets and every men's toilets in the entire country ever has been mixed sex. Apart from that's not how anyone has treated them. So that doesn't make any sense at all. She gets more ridiculous, but I have to say there's no law that forces organisations, service providers to provide single-sex space, and there is no law against them providing a third space, an additional space, such as unisex toilets, for example, or changing rooms. She suggested trans rights organisations should be using their powers of advocacy to ask for these third spaces, bearing in mind that she is the head of the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission. She is literally the person that apparently is meant to be fighting for minority groups' rights. And she said trans people shouldn't be able to use public spaces, and if they want to be able to use public spaces, maybe they should be asking for them. Like, who the fuck's meant to be doing that, dickhead? It's you. But of course, you're not going to do that because you don't want to do that. And you was installed literally sole single issue purpose was to oppose trans people's rights. The Commission is expecting to lay an updated statutory code of practice before Parliament by the summer, and has said it's working at a pace to incorporate the implications of its judgment. I am not... I'm not like worrying about this guidance, but not because it's not going to be bad, because I know it will be terrible. It's not like the court case where, like, God, which way is this going to go? How is this going to come out? Baroness Falkner and the EHRC, I think, is going to just release the worst, most insane, horrific anti-trans guidance you've ever seen. It's going to say everyone, service providers, so they're going to mean like workplaces, gyms, hospitals, everything. They're going to say what you should do by default is create men's spaces and women's spaces. You should ban trans women from men's spaces. You should ban trans women from women's spaces. You should ban trans men from men's spaces. You should ban trans men from women's spaces. If you want, you can make a third space. Doesn't matter. Doesn't care. That's what you should do. That should apply to schools, like everything. That I think that is what they're going to do, and I don't think there's really any doubt in my mind that that's going to happen. And I think we should just already be dismissive of how nonsense this is going to be. Like, it's not going to make sense. It's going to be stupid, like hateful on purpose. Yeah, and right. She says the Commission evaluates when the law is not followed by organisations and can speak to those bodies or use enforcement, compliance tools or whatever, and will be continuing to do that. So the EHRC is going to announce that everyone has to ban trans people from public spaces, and then they're going to start pressuring big organizations to do it. I think they'll pick some middle class bastion. It'll be like Marks and Spencer's or something. They'll release this new guidance in the summer at some point this year, a couple of months. It's going to be hastily written bullshit. It's going to just be a sea of gender critical buzzwords, and it's going to say you have to ban trans women from women's changing rooms, and then someone is gonna sue Marks and Spencer's instantly, and the EHRC will jump in and fund that and provide their lawyers and will force Marks and Spencer's to say trans women are banned from Marks and Spencer's. Like that is almost certainly going to happen. I'll be shocked if it didn't. She's pressuring the NHS to change their policy, which said trans people should be accommodated. So the Supreme Court decision has been described as incredibly worrying for the trans community. She says it's a victory for common sense. Anyone who ever says the phrase, "This is a victory for common sense," dickhead. Instantly. You know they're an irrational person who cannot argue their position, and they rely purely on gut feeling and having power, and that they can't articulate their position. It's just true across the board, always. But yeah, she has also said, I thought it said it here, but let me just try and quickly find it. Sorry, I'm just being a bit slow. I was under the impression that she had said that it's okay to ban trans men from both the men's and the women's spaces, as an example, and that trans people should just hope that there's a third space. I can't find the quote right now. But just while we're covering Baroness Falkner, who I think is someone that you should know about, who is a horrible person who is like trying to take away trans people's rights. A while ago, in 2022, there was a leak from the EHRC. So Baroness Falconer got installed, and most of the people working at the EHRC were good people who cared about human rights. I mean, why else would you apply for a job there? And when she got in, loads of people quit. There was like people saying that people were in tears all day. People were like refusing to do their work because it was so horrible. Like it created this, by the sounds of it, a really horrible workplace environment. At least that's what some of the articles at the time were saying. But anyway, there was a leak from the EHRC which was covered by Vice. Here by Ben Hunt, and it's just a screenshot of this, but you can find the article. It says trans people in Britain will be excluded from single-sex spaces unless they possess a GRC under an unpublished guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission. GRCs are currently held by as little as 1% of trans people in the country. So this would actually be a less extreme form of the law than what she's now saying about, like suggesting that all trans people should be banned, not just the 99% that don't have a GRC. And like at the time, I was quite panicked hearing this. Although I do have a GRC, it's just terrifying to hear that. I mean, what, they can't ask to see your GRC. No one fucking carries it around. So all that would mean is that people would be emboldened to start confronting you and start being aggressive and all of this kind of stuff. So I wrote, and I'm just going to put my hands up here and say this was a distressed email, and I sound a bit hysterical in it, and it was just the emotion that I was feeling at the moment. But let's just read it and see what she said in response. I sent her this email and she directly replied to me. I said, "Dear Baroness Falconer, I actually cannot believe the news today. How dare you treat us like subhumans? What is wrong with you? We are normal people too, just trying to live a normal life. We have hopes and dreams and challenges in life too. We just want to exist in society like we always have. I cannot imagine how much hatred you must have for us to want to ruin our lives and harm so many innocent people for absolutely nothing. Abhorrent. I hope the EHRC is investigated and brought to justice. I could never dream of wishing such harm on anyone else as to what you have on tens of thousands. You should be ashamed. Clearly a very emotional email. Yeah, that's it. That's all I can say, really. Dear Kate Montgomery, spelt my name wrong. You shouldn't believe the news today. It is written without any relationship to the truth. I'll be writing more fully in a few days, but in the meantime, don't fall for the poor journalistic practices written to alarm. Kind regards, Keshwa Falconer. Sent with Blackberry work. Blackberry. So, like, she took time out of her day. Like, she must have got loads of emails about this leak. She took time out of her day to respond to me personally and just lied. Like, what was the point in this? Like, to just, like, hide what you're up to? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it was a leak. Like, it got leaked. The documents got leaked about what it said. And now you're coming out, like, strongly supporting a worse version of that. So it's not like it was against what you morally stood for. Yeah, like, so what are you talking about? Like, I was worried at the time they were going to ban trans people who didn't have GRCs, and now you're going to try, like, you've openly said you're going to try and ban trans people who do have GRCs too. I mean, it just seems to me dishonest and slimy, and, like, why is this person in power? Your job title is like you're meant to be fighting for trans people, and you haven't really done it. You're also meant to be fighting for disabled people and people of color and immigrants and people of minority religions and all this kind of stuff. You don't really seem to do anything apart from write shit guidance trying to make trans people's lives worse, and then lie about it in emails to people. Like, what was the point in replying to me? She could have just ignored me. I don't even know why they did that. It's just so weird. We're also talking about weird behavior from the EHRC. See, is it still there? Yeah, I did a video about them a while ago. Let's see if we can. Oh, I'm pissed. Ugh, am I logged in on Twitter on this one? Maybe I am. Yep. Man, Twitter is garbage. Are we going to load it? Are we going to load it? Come on. Right. I did a video about them a while ago. And I just put her picture in the thumbnail. Like, on YouTube, by the way. And they DM'd me first. Like, I accepted the request. It has come to attention that you're using our logo and an image of our chairwoman, Keshwa Falconer, on your website. Not on my website. On YouTube. Like, just respond. I mean, you're in the news and stuff. We politely ask you to remove these as you do not have our permission. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss these concerns you have about our work directly. I wrote back to them. Obviously, they never replied because they didn't actually care. It's just such a weird, like, just fucking, what's going on? Just the state of this fucking person and this organization. The EHRC should just be disbanded, or whichever government gets in charge should just, like, not just completely reform this entire thing and put people who actually care about human rights in charge. But they should investigate everyone involved in it and look at all the internal documents and talk to all the people who were forced out of their job and, like, prosecute people. Man, I don't know. It's hard to know exactly what you can even say without risking people with way too much money trying to silence you. I mean, I think, in my opinion, Baroness Falkner is a horrible person, and clearly she is, like, campaigning to ban me from public spaces, like, but also seems to just be a loser and appears at least to have lied in an email to me, and appears to be enjoying this. I don't know. Anyway, horrible person. Don't sue me for expressing my opinion. Right. So, moving on. Imagine a British government having anyone in it that cares about human rights. There's like one or two. You know, there's a couple of politicians who do a little speech every now and then. Don't seem to make any difference, but you know, they do exist, some of them. So we're just going to keep going. We're going to talk about one more thing about this ruling, and then we're going to move on and talk about some other stuff that's related to this, but isn't directly just me saying the same fucking thing over and over again. Hang in there. I want to talk about the Labour Party. So in the UK, currently we have a Labour government. Labour used to be like the working class party, the left-wing party, or at least the centre-left party at some point in their history. At one point, it looked like we might have a Bernie Sanders moment with Jeremy Corbyn, who was very popular, and then the media didn't like him because he was going to tax rich people or something. And then in reaction to that, we got like this super right-wing Labour Party. And our last few Conservative governments were such a corrupt joke, such a mess, such a like embarrassment, but also so extreme and horrible and anti-human rights. It just felt like Labour seemed to be quite bad, and they seemed to have their worst leadership in years in power in the party, but at least they can't be as bad as the Conservatives. And it seems like they were in a relay race and they just smoothly handed the baton onto the Labour Party, and they've just carried on in the exact same trajectory into the sewer that the previous 5 governments have been on. The current Labour government is well right of Theresa May's government, which was the Conservative government 10 years ago. Like, way more right-wing. They're way more, like, anti-poor people and anti-immigrants and anti-LGBT people. But anyway, Keir Starmer also famously seems to be someone with no opinions and no conviction and no spine at all, and he just changes his mind on a whim. So Keir Starmer just came out and said that he thinks trans women are men and that we shouldn't be using women's spaces. Like, just, I mean, obviously that's a completely garbage, hateful, irrational position to hold. But also it's like the direct opposite of what he said only recently. Because he's just like based on what his advisors are telling him to say. I don't know. It just seems like so dishonest and bullshit. So someone in like the Labour Party or the Labour organisation has called him out. This lady, Jess Barnard, seems to be pretty legit. Whenever I've encountered her, she seems to be saying generally the right things, in my opinion. She says Keir Starmer should be held personally responsible if trans women are assaulted after he said they should use men's bathrooms. If. Yeah, if trans women are assaulted. Who knows whether that'll happen. Like, when? Probably already happened since the ruling has come out. But yeah, she said, the Prime Minister is going to put trans people in dangerous situations where they're vulnerable or force them out of society. That, I mean, that's obviously the options you have when they try and ban you from public spaces. What an appalling state for us to be in. So she is still part of the Labour Party, and obviously there are still good people working in the Labour Party. It's not like everyone in the group thing is disgusting. But the people in charge, they hate you. Like, they do not give a fuck. Or they're actively opposed to your future health, well-being. It's not just Keir Starmer. Obviously, I've gone quite hard against Wes Streeting on this show because Wes Streeting is a horrible, hate-filled person who I think is a true believer who genuinely hates trans people. That's the opinion I get, in my view, based on his actions, words, and the things that he's done professionally in the last few years. Keir Starmer, up until now, has just been a bit weaselly about it, and now has obviously just flipped his opinion on the moment. The Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson has also said the same thing. And all of them have been like, thanks for the much needed clarity on this ruling. This ruling where they haven't even defined what biological sex means, and this ruling where they've just said we're disregarding the law in some cases, but not always, and trans women and men in some contexts and women in other contexts. Who knows? But they've also all come out and said, oh yeah, trans women should be banned from the toilets now. But the law didn't say that. That isn't covered by the ruling. That isn't what they said. These like horrible people like Bridget Phillipson seem to have just been like waiting for an excuse to say, yeah, we should take all trans people's rights away. And as soon as one fairly major but not all-encompassing ruling went quite badly for us, it's like, oh cool, well we can just strip all of their rights now. Yeah, just disgusting people. Just want to remind people of the pledges that Keir Starmer signed up to. This is their 2020 leadership elections. They said they were going to do a fully inclusive, like Keir Starmer personally signed off on this publicly. Fully inclusive sex education for LGBT kids, trans rights, reforming the Gender Recognition Act. I will campaign to reform the Gender Recognition Act to include self-declaration process for the introduction of legal recognition for non-binary gender identities. I believe that trans women are women, trans women are men, and non-binary gender identities are valid and should be respected. In 2020, not even 5 years ago. Tackling the rise of hate crimes, a healthcare system that supports LGBT community. Wow, imagine if you didn't put a fucking hateful demon in charge of healthcare, then we might have had that. Supporting LGBT homeless people, ending conversion therapy, something which Labour is still apparently going to do. So maybe this one they haven't broken. We'll see. This one, I mean, this one just seems insane to me. A fully independent complaints process. I will introduce a fully independent complaints process to tackle incidences of homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia and all forms of discrimination in the Labour Party. What are you talking about? As if this would ever happen. Like, half of the Labour MPs at the moment are, like, salivating at the idea of calling trans women and men and saying that we shouldn't have human rights and just saying the most extreme, horrible things about us. As if they would do anything about this. Like, man, it's just insane what they pledged to. I don't even know why they bothered saying up to this, because even if they'd stuck to the rest of it, they would have never done this one. Keeping LGBT people at the heart of decision-making. I fully commit to consulting LGBT Labour as Labour's official LGBT affiliate when making political and policy decisions that directly affect the LGBT community. Will you fuck? We weren't involved in the court decision. We haven't been involved in any of the parliament debates since. They're not going to consult us when the EHRC guidance comes out. They're not going to consult us when they start trying to change the law on what spaces people can use. Just bullshit. Insane. And it's actually got so extreme. Like, the Labour Party has got so irredeemably bad that the health minister, like, all these fucking, it's not just like, oh yeah, the transport minister or something said they hate trans people. It's like the people who actually have power over us. Karen Smith has called on Conservatives to apologise for the party's pro-trans stance under Theresa May. So Theresa May was our prime minister like 5 prime ministers ago, in 2016, and she was the one who said that, the first one who said that the Gender Recognition Act should work for trans people, basically. And there was a glimmer of hope for like 6 months that they actually might change the law and make, and all of this insanity about trans people since could have just not existed. And this Theresa May was a conservative, is a conservative, still is very right-wing. At the time, was pretty garbage on a lot of things. And now the Labour Party are so far right of a conservative government from like only 10 years ago that they're demanding that the Conservatives apologise for not being right-wing enough, for not being hateful enough. Like, what fucking world are we living in? Insane. How could anyone vote for this? How could anyone vote for like you if you've been a Labour voter your whole life, or since you could vote, and because you value things like supporting society, investing in society, helping disabled people, helping poor people, taxing rich people, building community services, improving healthcare, supporting LGBT rights, ending discrimination. Like, these are all the things that were traditionally associated with the Labour Party. How could you vote for these people? Like, that isn't the party anymore. That might have been what they were even just 10 years ago. Now, this party, in its current incarnation, with Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting and Bridget Phillipson, are so much further into, like, far-right territory than Theresa May's government was, that they are demanding Theresa May apologise for not being hateful enough. Like, insane. Yeah. I'm never going to say I would never vote for a party again, because I remember when the Liberal Democrats said they weren't going to introduce tuition fees. So everyone voted for them and then introduced tuition fees, and everyone was like, I'm never going to vote for them again. And no one really has voted for them again. They just kind of disappeared as a political party. They ruined their like one shot at becoming a major party. I remember thinking at the time, because I was like a teenager or whatever, just like my first time I could vote or something, thinking, I'm never going to vote for these traitors again. As far as political parties go, they are one of the less treacherous parties. Like, compared to what the Conservatives did, I mean, just nosedived into insanity, but also compared to what Labour are doing now, treachery on a next level scale. Who knows? Maybe in the future, Labour will have stopped getting bad and they haven't got no better, but all of the other parties are orders of magnitude worse. Like, you never know. Since I've been able to vote, every single election, the world has got worse. Pretty much everywhere in the world. Isn't that fun? So who knows? Could get a lot worse. Oh, seeing someone talking about the cigar picture. Yeah, let's talk about that next, shall we? So, J.K. Rowling directly responded to something I said. Not for the first time, but about the current Supreme Court ruling situation. And probably the most directly she has done. But I'm sure everyone's seen this now, but I just want to, again, cover this picture of J.K. Rowling. So, we just had this horrible Supreme Court decision, and trans people lost a lot of rights. Cis people haven't gained anything. Like, there's been no... it's not like, oh, in exchange for this, we're increasing protections or whatever. It's literally just... we've taken away rights from trans people. And so people who hate trans people obviously enjoy that. But it's not like, you know, oh, and we're also giving £100 to every cis person in the country, something you might celebrate over. It's literally like, hasn't affected their lives. Anyway, J.K. Rowling donated at least £70,000 publicly to fund this case, which has cost the Gender Criticals like £1 million or something. She probably funds them a lot more in a lot of different ways. When the ruling came through that trans people were going to lose some of their rights, she posted, I love it when a plan comes together, and a picture of her like doing an Andrew Tate. I don't know, like smoking a cigar on like a private yacht or in a hotel somewhere that you can't afford because she is a billionaire. I don't know. It's like, obviously these kind of like I don't know, narcissistic conservative types, they like making the libs mad. So obviously she wanted to like just upset trans people by being like, oh yeah, get wrecked, you know, here's a picture of me like with my monocle on, like but I don't know, do they think this makes them look good? It's like cartoon villain evil. I mean, it's not like, you know, obviously I am very upset that my rights got taken away, and obviously I hate J.K. Rowling because she's a horrible person and she's been funding that case. So it's not like I'm going to pretend that, oh, I'm not mad at all, you know, like I say as I turn into a corn cob. Like, obviously I am angry and upset over the ruling, but like this photo doesn't make me feel more angry and upset. I mean, I actually laughed when I first saw it because it's like, probably the first. This probably provided me the first smile that I had since the ruling at the time that I saw it, which was really like the next day or something. It's like fucking Monopoly Man or something. Like when you think of Andrew Tate, what this is like the pose that he does. It's like she just needs a Ferrari in the background or something to look like one of these rich pricks who has control over you and you can't do anything about it. Yeah, just I cannot believe that she thinks this looks good, or anyone who is an insecure teenager thinks this looks good. I feel like this photo will be used in after she dies, to show how evil she was. I don't know. It feels like it could be like on her biography, written like, you know, from hero to villain or something. Like, could be the title or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, crazy. Anyway, she responded to something I said. So I tweeted out on the actual day of the ruling, the level of injustice is just so extreme. They had a hearing about what rights, what freedoms, what future trans people have, without a single trans person being involved, yet with multiple hate groups. They decided we don't deserve equality, and then said, no one won. A bunch of men who have never even met a trans person, talking to people who have openly said they want to wipe us out, deciding if we are as deserving as them, and concluding no. I think that's a reasonable summary of what happened. I was under the impression at the time that the Supreme Court was all men. It is not. It's like 3 men, 2 women, but a bunch of cis people, you know, issue a correction here. There were men there. It's probably mainly men in the room. But anyway, a bunch of cis people who haven't met us deciding whether we should have rights. I don't see how this is any different than a room full of white people deciding whether black people should have rights. A room full of men deciding whether women shouldn't have rights. You know, like that famous picture of the Saudi Arabian Women's Conference or whatever it was. Let's try and get this up. Yeah, this one. This is what it reminds me of. The Saudi Arabian Women's Conference. No room for girls at the Women's Conference in Saudi. This ridiculous spectacle even real? Like, that was the situation that we had. Why were there no trans people when we were just talking about trans people's rights? It's just so like transparently unjust. Anyway, J.K. Rowling's responded to this, or has written something whilst posting a picture of my tweet. She said, the court clarified that UK women have sex-based rights. A meaningless bus phrase, really, but you know what she's trying to say. You and your fellow activists' meltdowns are laying bare what has been obvious to a lot of us for years. When you say equality, you mean women have no right under any circumstance to draw boundaries that exclude men. So if we just translate what she said here out of like gender critical speak, she said the court has overruled previously existing law saying that trans women don't have legal protections from sexism. Activists are having meltdowns. I mean, meltdown. You usually use meltdown in a like derogatory way to suggest someone's like a toddler. I think a lot of people have had a meltdown because it's been pretty terrible. So I'm not gonna like pretend I didn't have a meltdown. Showing what you think. When you say equality, you mean women shouldn't be allowed, or I don't just mean women. Cis people shouldn't be allowed to segregate trans people away from society. And like, I don't know why you think that our reaction to having our rights removed is like revealing that, when that's just like a fundamental core position of anyone who supports LGBT rights. Like, I don't think you should be able to ban gay people from the room with you. I don't think you should be able to ban trans people from the room with you. I don't think you should be able to ban like Muslim people from the room with you. Like in a legal public setting. So I mean, I know they want to describe it, women have no right to draw boundaries that exclude men. But I mean, that's that's obviously nonsense, because you can draw your own boundaries. I mean, you shouldn't be able to ban people you don't like the look of from public toilets. Like, that's different to not being able to create your own boundaries, because your own boundaries could be like, I don't want to work at a job where there are men, and that is a fine boundary for you to draw, and you can find a workplace that only has women. You could even say, I want a workplace that only has cis people who are straight and Christian, and you could probably find that workplace. That's you setting your own boundary, but that's different to the law making it so you can legally say, we're not going to hire trans people, gay people, or non-Christians or whatever. So it's kind of, I mean, obviously everything she says is like lying and stupid. Anyway, what she said here, it's just kind of dumb, because, I mean, it's like, oh, the big reveal of your core position, which you've been saying openly for ages, and I've described it in, obviously she's got to describe it in like a bad faith way, but which is obviously going to be wrong. But even so, all of this doesn't respond to anything that I've said here. I've said this has obviously been an unjust situation because they ruled on trans people's rights and trans people weren't involved. And she's just been like, you're bad. Like, this is why I just don't think that she's a very intelligent or eloquent gender critical activist. Like, obviously she's good for their movement because she's unimaginably rich, has no moral compass, is obsessed to the point of insanity with us, and is a huge celebrity. Like, all of those things are good for their movement. But a better, like, an actual response to this would have been something like, this affected cis people's rights too. Obviously they wouldn't say that. They'd be like, this affected men's and women's rights too, and we were present, and we were allowed to have a fair say, and you were allowed to write like Amnesty International wrote a letter on your behalf, and the Scottish government represented you, like, to say that actually it was more fair than it was. Like, that would be some kind of pushback to the point that I'd made. And like, the core argument I'm making here is it was not fair because we weren't there, like, the trial for our own future. So when someone messaged me and been like, JK Rowling's responded to one of your things, and like, you always know that that's bad because there's going to be so much like hate and threats and violent comments and stuff said towards you. Like, the previous time when she responded to what I said, I used to do loads of Twitter before Twitter totally went off the rails. I think my worst single day for receiving abuse, and like, I think it was the day that someone sent me a video of a lynching and said, you're next, was because she responded to one of my tweets. Like, that is by far the worst thing. So when, like, it was on the actual fucking, I think, did she say it on the day? Yeah, on the 16th. So on the day, someone messaged me and been like, JK Rowling's responded to anything. I was like, I can't even look. I'm not interested in looking. It made me just feel nervous that, now, not only on top of like mourning my future, I also have to deal with like all this extra abuse. So I left it a couple of days, and then I looked and I was a bit nervous. And I looked, well, what's she really done here? She's wrote her little smug gender critical copy and paste bullshit that doesn't really mean anything. She just kind of like promoted what I said. And obviously her audience, like, it's Twitter, so it's like nonsense, and there's like going to be a load of fucking blue tick knobheads in the comments saying like, trans women are men. But more people will have seen me, like, according to this, 500,000 people saw this tweet. There's no way these numbers are true, but surely thousands more people saw me pointing out this injustice than they would have otherwise. They didn't get a counter argument from her. Like, lots of people would have just been satisfied that she said anything horrible about trans people at all, for sure. But there will be a load of people who are even maybe like slightly anti-trans, or not pro-trans at least, who would have seen this specifically because she tweeted it out and been like, oh, trans people weren't even involved. That does seem a bit unfair. Even if I support the results, that does seem a bit unfair. So when I read this, and also I resolved to just not read the replies or look at my DMs or anything. I I just feel like this is kind of good that she shared it. I hope she shares more of my tweets and fails to have a rebuttal to them. Yeah, thanks a lot, mate. Cartoon villain, low intelligence, horrible person. I'm glad that she smokes. I hope that she has a lot more cigars. She should smoke 5 a day. That would be great. I hope she enjoys them. Right. How's everyone doing? We're a bunch in. I've got so much more stuff I want to cover. How's people doing? Have we still got energy? How many people have we got in the chat? Because I've still got some energy. My voice isn't dying. We've got loads of people watching, right? We're just going to keep going. I hope everyone's doing well. Let's have a little chat break. 500 cigarettes. Yeah, like, you know what? I know she's a billionaire, but if she wants some cigars on me, I'll buy her some cheap cigars for free. Yeah, you know, that offer goes to any gender critical person. I'll happily fund your nicotine addiction, your lung blackening exercise. Yeah, thanks for platforming me, I guess. I mean, obviously when JK Rowling platforms you, you get like all this extra abuse, but I know how to handle that to most of the time. 99% of it pings off me, so yeah, I hope that her home stays moist and damp and unaired. Oh, there was a funny post the other day that I saw from some JK Rowling apologist, and they were like doing, oh, both sides, you know, she's been horrible to trans people, but trans people have been horrible to her. And someone replied like, yeah, but she was horrible first. The gender critical people are like the aggressors in this situation. And they were like, you literally went on the internet and said that her brain was infected by mold. How can you possibly believe this true? It's like, oh man, okay, yeah. They definitely, yeah, they definitely got upset by that one. Katie, you've seen that the Green Party co-leader failing call trans women. I saw Carla Denya, who's one of the leaders of the Green Party, saying some pretty good positive stuff about trans people. Maybe she's been jumped by the media and has chickened out of saying it. Who knows? We'll see. I don't have much faith in any political parties at the moment. I think the Liberal Democrats are probably the best for trans rights at the moment, or the Green Party, one of those two. Of the bigger parties. We'll see. It's a long way to go to the next election. Black lungs, black soul, black mold. That sounds like a metal album. I'm sorry for this, Katie. It's so frustrating. It is incredibly frustrating. What's so, like, one of the things that's most frustrating about this is when the court is just like, oh yeah, it's not your legal sex, it's your biological sex. And we're not going to define biological sex. And all the gender criticals are like, yeah, it's your biological sex. And then all the newspapers are like, trans women actually get counted as their biological sex. And like no journalists, no politicians are being like, what is biological sex? And like, who's defined this in law? What, like, you're not saying, like, when you say it's not legal sex, like, obviously your legal sex is what it says on your birth certificate, or what it says on your passport, or your driving license, or the form you're filling in, like, whichever context you're in, it's, your legal sex is just a value or multiple values written in a database or on a form somewhere. So that it's very, like, legal sex can be binary. Legal sex can be fucking anything. They could just turn every trans woman's legal sex from male to male overnight, whatever. But when they, like, specifically say biological sex, it's like, so you're saying that it actually relates to my material biological characteristics. Well, traditionally, all the sex characteristics I have that you can observe are female ones. And obviously that's not true for all trans women, but it's the truth for at least some of them. And like now it's like written into law basically. There's definitely a legal challenge there. Where I mean, if I was in a situation where they said, no, this space is for biological females only, I'd be like, well, okay then, it's fine for me. It's bad for some trans women who wouldn't consider themselves that way, or some trans people who haven't medically transitioned, or whatever. It's bad for some intersex women, but it's not bad for, like, literally to the word of what you're actually saying. Doesn't exclude all trans women and intersex women. Yeah, that's very frustrating that none of the like political media class even having the guts to attempt to approach this. The ruling does say its sex is recorded on the original birth certificate, which is another way of saying genitals at birth. Yeah, but then it also says biological sex in other places, which is not the same. So, like, obviously, if they say original birth certificate, then it's back to being legal sex, and they're just saying you can't change your legal sex for the Equality Act, but you can for other things. Man, we're touching on a few things I want to cover coming up. So let's get onto these. So right. Out of all of the responses to this horrible Supreme Court ruling, probably the best, or one of the best ones I've seen, hasn't come from a trans rights organization, or from a politician, or from a lawyer. It's come from the UK's very own Crab Museum. Yep, we have a museum for crabs. It's in London. Here are the opening times. But for some reason, the Crab Museum has issued a statement on trans people's rights being stripped away in the UK. And it's like legit. It's not just like, oh, it's just funny that the Crab Museum said trans rights. They made the point and they kind of backed up what I've been saying, and they're actually doing the job that journalists should be doing. So let's read the Crab Museum statement. Today, the Supreme Court voted to exclude a group of persecuted people from equality legislation. Their ruling centered on the word biology, with the judge stating that biological sex is assumed to be too self-explanatory and to require no further explanation. Speaking in a professional capacity as a museum of biology, this is not how biology works. There are no binaries in nature and biology. Like all sciences, should never be taken for the granted or assumed to be self-explanatory. Yeah, it's literally the opposite of what biology is. Quite literally the quest to explain things that are not self-explanatory. That's like what science is. Anyway, even worse, it should never be used to justify weaponized cultural issues. This ruling is an abuse of science. We have spoken many times before about this. The Crab Museum, just to remind you. There is immense variation between individuals within a biological sex. And, more importantly, biological sex itself, not just gender, is a spectrum, and it really shouldn't be a big deal. If you don't like trans people, then just be honest about your prejudices. But don't use biology to support your views in the same way that racists do. Our trans siblings must be defended at all costs. If we allow the limitation of their rights, then other minorities won't be far behind. Maybe you'll be next. So this is the reason I think this is a good statement, is because it's very clear about what's happened. Trans people's rights have been harmed here, removed. Then they say the core part of the argument from the people who are justifying this is factually, scientifically, biologically wrong. Like, that is a core part of pointing out. Then they say, we need to support trans people. Like, there's like the three components. This is what the journalists don't have to do the last one if they're trying to seem like unbiased. But like, any journalist writing on this should say, this is what the Supreme Court has ruled. You can say this is what the Supreme Court has said. This is what anti-trans activist J.K. Rowling has said. Fine. But you should also then say this has factually removed rights from trans people and made their lives more dangerous and worse. That's just a fact. That's not an opinion. Then you can say they claim that it's about biology. Then you are like bound by your profession to investigate whether that is true. And you will inevitably come to the conclusion that biological sex and birth sex are different for some people. And biological sex is not a binary and it's not immutable. Like, they're just facts that you should come to if you did any research. So yeah, anyway, shout out to the Crab Museum. You should go and visit them and give them some support. But just on this, just talking about scientists, we didn't video on this already and also talked about it when it happened in 2018. Man, was it really 2018 when they did this? God, okay, right. Time has flown. But his 2,617 scientists in biologists, geneticists, psychologists, anthropologists, saying, we're compelled to write to you, our elected representatives, about the current, so this is in America, about the current administration's proposal to legally define gender as binary, condition determined at birth, based on genitalia, with plans to clarify disputes with genetic testing. This proposal is fundamentally inconsistent, not only with science, but with ethics, practices, human rights, and basic dignity. I think actually this isn't the statement I was thinking of when I queued it up. There was a more recent one as well that said, we're a bunch of biologists and we're saying that sex isn't binary. Like, when these people keep saying biology, all the ones who keep saying biological sex aren't the biologists. It just so happens that some of my best friends are biologists. True. For some reason, like, I'm an engineer by like university degree, and I did have friends who were engineers, but somehow I ended up just with mainly friends who were biologists. And for a while, all my friends were biologists, and I went on holiday with this bunch of biologists, and it was like me and like 15 biologists. I don't know quite how that happened, but like, biologists, or never unanimously, because science is never unanimous, but like overwhelmingly are gonna agree that, I mean, observably, sex isn't binary or immutable. So it's not them who are saying biological sex over and over again in all these legal rulings. They're not all the ones being consulted on this. Yeah, there's, I don't know, what? Maybe I should try. No, I'm not going to find it. There's been multiple of these where a bunch of scientists all say this isn't how sex works, and then the media doesn't give a fucking shit, and they just repeat biological sex over and over again without like asking what that means. And also, we saw in an article earlier where they say natal. If they say natal female or natal male, I guess fair enough. You could say cis person. Maybe you don't like the word cis, or because you're an idiot, or maybe you're scared of the people who lie and pretend they don't like the word cis. Anyway, if you say natal male or natal female or natal boy or natal girl, that's not the best, but whatever. If you say natal man or natal woman, you're an idiot, because no one is a man or a woman at birth. If you say biological woman, you're making a mess of things, because all women are biological women. Trans women are biological women because they are biological people. Like, we're not robots, we're not holograms, we're not imaginations. You can see that people are constantly trying to find a word other than cis to say cis. Trans people, the opposite of trans people, it can't be natal people because trans people were people at birth. It can't be biological people because trans people are biological. It can't. It can't be normal because some trans people are normal and some aren't. Some cis people are normal and some aren't. There's already a word for the opposite. Anyway, totally sidetrack. The Crab Museum says trans rights. You should visit the Crab Museum. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I've never been. Maybe it's shit. Who knows? But biologists are going to continuously come out and say this isn't how it works. And I think that we should really push for biology to actually, like, what you need to stop accepting their premise. When someone says to you, like, I've seen so many allies just concede this recently, where they've been like, I think it's a disgrace that the Supreme Court has said that trans women, or people should be treated by their biological sex, because trans women's biological sex being male shouldn't just, like, stop. Don't concede their point there, that biological sex is the same as birth sex, is the same as legal sex, is this, like, binary property you're gifted at birth that you can't measure and isn't actually related to your material characteristics. When you say biologically, you have to be talking about someone's actual biology that they actually have, and not in the past and not in the future. Now, like, biology is now. What your biological sex is not what your biological sex necessarily was. It's what it is today. It's your actual bits. It's the things you actually have on your body, the things you can measure, the things you can potentially touch or see. That's what biological sex is. And I'm not going to drop this, because constantly 99% of the people saying biological sex mean something completely different. They mean not your biological sex. Like, and when you're using words to mean literally the exact opposite of reality, it's just all fucking nonsense. I think everyone needs to hammer home on this. And I do realize that if you say biological sex is the reality of what someone's body is today, which what else can it fucking be? That's literally what it means. That there will be some trans women who the majority of their sex characteristics are male and are much closer to the male node on the bimodal distribution. And that was true for me at one point. But the important thing is, when it comes to healthcare, your actual biology is what's important. Like, that's the only thing that's important. If I've got a medicine which depends on your hormone levels, if you've not medically transitioned at all, you're going to want the one that is, like, for typical male hormone levels, assuming that's what your hormone levels are. And if you've medically transitioned and your hormone levels are female ones, you're going to want the female one. Literally doesn't even matter what your identity was, doesn't matter what your genitals are, doesn't matter anything. All that matters is the, like, actual biological parts of the process which interact with that. And there's the same with human rights. Like, you could say that genitals are a core part of biological sex. True. And if you have a medical condition that affects one set of genitals over the other, then the ones you actually have are the ones that are important. When it comes to human rights, someone being bigoted to you in the workplace isn't dependent on your genitals, because they can't see your genitals. So obviously, that's not the important part of sex in that context. So it's all very context specific, and there's just no rational way, no consistent way of justifying discrimination against any trans people based on biology. Like, you just cannot do it unless you just hand wave it away and say things like biology self-explanatory without addressing it. Anyway, we've done this segment. We're moving on. We are going to talk about... I've still got loads of energy. Let's go. I think I needed this rant. We needed to get this out of the way. I hope everyone's enjoying it. I hope everyone's enjoying the energy. Let's talk about... Let's not do another rant straight up. Let's talk about Graham Linehan. So, in the wake of the Supreme Court decision, Graham Linehan tweeted this on Twitter, seen by 131,000 people, apparently. If a trans woman is in a female-only space, she is committing a violent, abusive act. So just to be clear, that includes me going to the toilet at work, which I don't know how many times I go to the toilet at work on average. a day, probably like 3. So like maybe like up to 20 times a week I go to the toilet at work. No, that seems like quite a lot. 15, 15? I don't know. Something like that. I have been apparently, according to Graham Linehan, committing a violent and abusive act. I'm sure there's a toilet joke to be made there, but I'm not going to make it because I'm not that kind of person. But no, obviously not. I go in, I do a wee, I scroll on the internet for just 1 minute too long, and then I go and wash my hands and get out. Just like everyone else. Okay, insane. Anyway, obviously, just generic, gender critical, whatever. But he is stepping up the rhetoric. He is feeling emboldened by the Supreme Court decision, and he says, make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch her in the genitals. So, very unambiguously, I think, in my opinion, he is calling for violence against trans women. I don't know how you could interpret this in any other way. If someone calls, like, screams and whatever, makes a scene, then that's obviously horrible. But in the end, not fatal. In the UK, if they call the cops, that could be bad, could end in violence. Unlikely to end in you getting shot, but in a lot of countries, that could easily be the case. But, like, just clearly calling to punch people. And this is... Graham Linehan is not no one. He is... well, I mean, he's a loser, but he's not, like, an anonymous, faceless, gender-critical account with 10 followers. You see this kind of stuff from them all the time. The gender-critical, like, rank-and-file minions are constantly saying things like this and calling for violence against trans people. But this is... this dude has less than 600,000 followers now. But 600,000 followers. It's had 5,000 likes, 131,000 views, and I think is clearly calling for violence against trans women for doing things, normal, everyday acts that all women do and that we've all been doing every single day of our lives for longer than he's been alive. I mean, he's obviously much older than me, but trans people in general. Do you think that I should be... I mean, obviously I don't have balls and all these... The way he's describing it here is disgusting, but do you think that I deserve to be punched in the genitals for going to the toilet? I mean, maybe you feel like you should... I don't know what reporting to the police or anything would do. I don't really have much faith in the system at all. But, I mean, as I have said here, even if you attack us, even if you sexually assault us, we won't stop existing or living our lives. I'm never going to stop using the women's spaces. So get fucked. You're a danger to women and LGBT people. I hope you see justice one day. I mean, true. Since the ruling, I mean, in general, I have rehearsed in my mind quite a lot what I would do if I encountered someone like this. I've never encountered anyone like this in real life. But obviously these like extreme freaks are probably feeling more emboldened than ever at the moment, so they're more likely to have the guts to do something. I don't think Graham personally is just talk. I could see him doing this. I wouldn't be if he was violent towards a trans person, I would be completely unsurprised. If he was violent towards me, I'd be very unsurprised. I would fear for my physical safety if I encountered him in public, especially seeing as he's given out threats like this. But I've thought about it a lot, and you might be in a situation where this is more likely to happen now. If someone confronts you, or if someone confronts me and says, like, biological female sex-based rights, and clearly identifies as themselves as some like gender critical freak, I think if I was on my own, I would probably try and record it, because they're going to lie about it. Though obviously recording it has its own risks too, because they could also say you were recording women in the toilet or something. They're going to lie about it, whatever you do. And they're going to accuse you of sexual misconduct regardless of what happens. As he has done here, like inherently saying if you wash your hands, then you are violent and abusive. Like, they're always going to lie about it. So having some kind of record of what happened seems safer to me. I would like to think that I would be defiant. Obviously, it would be incredibly stressful and upsetting. But I think it's important to stand your ground, and to carry on living your life and doing your business. And if someone starts shouting at you, you can say, no, I'm sorry, I do not believe in your stupid ideology. I'm going to the toilet and I'm going to wash my hands. Leave me alone. If they threaten to call the police, I would say, yep, please call the police. And I would carry on doing my thing and just ignore them best I could. If they got violent, I don't know. I'm not a fighter. I am scared of this, to be honest. Like, a lot of gender critical men seem like very violent and horrible people. It's just not impossible, but I am not going to live in fear of this. I'm not going to let them intimidate me out of living my life safely and happily. I'm not going to stop going to the gym or going to service stations or going to work. I'm going to just carry on, and if one of them sexually assaults me or attacks me, then I hope that I am not permanently injured and can try and do something about it to get justice. And I think if one of them kills me, then that's just going to have to be how it goes, because I'm not going to live in fear of that. And I don't think you should either, because that is what they want. Yeah, it's going to be difficult times, but I think we just have to do our best to expose what these people are like, fight back against it, and just do our best to live our lives. What I do think is important is if someone is really horrible to you and confronts you, to never... Like, you've got to try and stay as calm as you can and not escalate, and not... Absolutely do not be the first person to be violent. And... Like, I don't think any of you would, but obviously when you're in a position where people are like being aggressive and abusive towards you, people panic, and you know, fight or flight is a thing, and my fight or flight response apparently is freeze. So I'm likely to express no emotions and not do anything, and I'm going to have to snap myself out of just standing there and gawping and be like, I need to say something like, no, I don't believe in your hateful ideology, leave me alone. I'm a woman, get out of here. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, on to, just to make the Graham Linehan thing a bit funnier. Like, he tweets hundreds of times a day. Less and less people are seeing them. Like, I know his last one got seen a bunch, but it's because he was calling for violence. So obviously loads of trans people shared it. So then it got seen by loads of people. Loads of his stuff just gets like... just terrible interaction. This guy's got over 500,000 followers and he's getting 93 likes. Like, that is abysmal. That is really, really bad. Anyway, he tweets rubbish all the time. I don't look at his Twitter. I never go on it anymore. I just happen to have seen this in passing, and it's just incredible. Like, almost every single thing you pick out for them is either horrible and abusive and threatening, or it's just the stupidest thing you've ever read. Like, all the time. So here we go. Someone saying... Pictures from yesterday's rally supporting our trans siblings following the Supreme Court's ruling last week. Let's just have a look at these nice photos. There were thousands of people at these protests. It was good to see. Anyway, he said, lol, siblings, trans men forgotten again, because this is a men's sexual rights movement. Do you not know what siblings means, you stupid fuck? This guy's a writer, allegedly. Do you not think that some, like, siblings are boys? Like, what are you talking about? Your ex-wife has 2 male siblings. At least 2. Like, one of your children is a boy. How are they this stupid? Like, what are you talking about, you absolute loser? It just constantly amazes me how there are people like, if English isn't your first language, and or you're you're not good at literacy or whatever. I'm not dunking on people who don't know what words mean. Some words aren't common use. If you didn't know the word sibling, whatever. But if you read this and you weren't a prick, you'd be like, pictures from yesterday's rally supporting our trans siblings. What does siblings mean? You might get from the context that siblings is like some kind of term for like friends or partners or coexistent beings or whatever. But you might be like, I don't know what siblings means. I'm gonna look it up. And you Google it, and then it would say siblings are brothers and sisters, individuals sharing at least one parent. They can be full siblings sharing both parents, half siblings sharing one parent, or even step siblings. And you'd be like, oh, okay. So they mean like a brother and a sister or whatever. So I'm not just dunking. It's not that I'm dunking on people who don't know what words mean. It's just incredible that they are so bad faith and so stupid. Like, this was a whole thing for him. This was a whole thought, a whole concise action was like, read this. And the one little dunk he had didn't have any pushback. And he's obviously like, the gender critical rallies, their biggest ever one was like 200 people. And then there's one that happens with days to plan it, and there was like 30,000+ people there. Obviously, it's a bit cognitive dissonance for them. Doesn't have any other response other than to try and claim that siblings doesn't include men and boys. Stupid person. Why am I even doing this? Let's move on. So, how's everyone doing? We've now been on for 2 and a bit hours. I still want to say some things. How's the energy level of everyone doing? Maybe I should just stop checking up on everyone and just say fuck it and just carry on. YouTube Studios crashed. That's always a good sign. We're back. I hope that I'm still streaming. We're still getting comments. Yeah, I think we're okay. Oh, we got 420 live viewers. That's an internet number. Good stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. Start sending me like the emoji in chat if you think that I've gone on too long. Oh, $9.99 from Chris. Hey Katie, I have a question. I know I asked, I was busy at work, but do you like Pokemon? If yes, do you play Pokemon Sword? How similar was Galar to the UK? Right, I'm doing a Pokemon sidetrack. I love Pokemon. I'm obsessed with Pokemon cards. I have played most of the Pokemon games. My first ever one was Blue. I'm currently playing through X. I just bought a 3DS for the first time. I've got 7 badges in that one. I played through Sword and Shield, and I played through Scarlet and Violet on the Switch, and I will play the new one. And I also played Legends. Anyway, I played whichever the blue one was, probably Sword, or maybe Shield, whichever one it was. But I played it when I was in recovery from surgery, and I do remember lots of it. I know that Sirfetch'd, I loved Sirfetch'd, and he was like my main guy, because it's funny, like that guy with a leak. I don't remember that much of the game. I think I was in a bit of a morphine haze or something. But I'm aware that it's meant to be something to do with that. I would like to replay Sword because I feel like I haven't given it a fair analysis. I remember it being quite good. I also remember thinking it was a little bit easy, and X I found quite difficult. Anyway, am I reading the first super chat or the last one? Oh god, I should go. There is a way on YouTube of seeing all the super chats, isn't there? $5 from Robert. Para character lifting some weights, saying keep it up. Thanks. Let's see if I can get up all of the super chats just before I move on to the next thing. There is definitely a way of doing this somehow. I think I have to go on to Studio and then Is it on community? No. Wait, I'll just Google it. How to see all super chats. Oh god. Okay. Earn supers. Okay, here we go. See all. Thanks, Chris. I just answered your one. So one here from Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Malicious compliance by trans men is key. We're going to talk about that next. I've got a nice cat emoji from Puggles. I wonder why any TERFs won't debate Sam Cedar or Judith Butler. I've seen many TERFs say, guess who's Jewish, Sam Cedar, and that's why they won't debate him. Plus, they have been pushing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Yes, some of them absolutely have. Yeah, I don't know. They don't really want to debate. They just want to talk over you. Zinnia saying trans rights forever. True. Thank you very much. Shout out to Zinnia. Very kind donation from Jade. Sean saying, I discovered a gap in the proof. Oh, we got a maths one. One of my theorems for my PhD. Luckily, I have about 9 months to repair it. No, I just got to the stream. Gosh, Sean, that sounds stressful. Good luck with that. Man, I can't believe how many super chats we've got here. Thank you very much, everyone. That is super kind. Velocity11 saying, as Owen Jones once said, I think they're going to be disappointed that trans people will continue to exist. Absolutely. Yes. Domestic saying, thank you for trying to reply to your Blue Sky followers. I have tried my best. Sorry if I've missed you. You're welcome to poke me. Chris saying, hey, Katie, I have a random question. Do you like Pokemon? Yes, we've already done that one. Moif saying, proud of you, Katie, stay safe. A heart from Puggles. Brutus saying, I'm a very brick-headed caveman of a straight dude. I would hardly think about queer stuff if I didn't have to, but society that violates the rights of one violates the rights of many. Keep your head up. Yes, that is a good position to have. I care about trans people because I am a trans person and it directly affects me. But I also care about non-binary people who are affected slightly different to me because they're people. But I also care about disabled people and people of colour and stuff who experience things that I don't because it's morally correct. So yeah, I'm glad that other people also hold that view. Love and support and hugs to Katie from Christians Against Dinosaurs. Thank you very much. Jackie saying, cis men could claim to be trans men and claim they're just following the law by using the women's restroom. We are just about to talk about this next. And then Sean saying, you can count past any infinite ordinal number. Can I? Thanks, Sean. Right. Okay. I just said it. We're going to talk about this trans men thing. A couple of super chats said about that. This is the next thing. So, the trans men gotcha. You will see quite often this situation. They say they're going to ban trans women from women's spaces. And then someone says, aha, but that would mean they have to force trans men into the women's spaces because you think they are women. So that means you will have men in the women's spaces, which is exactly the thing you said you didn't want. Get wrecked. And yeah, if the people you're talking to about any kind of consistent worldview, then yes, what you said is true. Sometimes they will write laws that say that. They will like create a law because they're stupid. But what you will actually find is they say, well, we also want to ban trans men from women's spaces too. And we also want to ban trans women from men's spaces. And you'd be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. They don't give a fuck. They do not care. That once you understand that the single sole guiding principle of the anti-trans movement, the gender criticals, the Republicans, whoever, is trans bad, then what they're saying and doing makes sense. But if you try and take them at their word or treat one of their statements as like some logically consistent position on which they're going to build their others upon, what they say will make no sense and it'll keep contradicting itself. And like, this isn't just me saying this, like, Mayor Forstater has basically said the same thing that I am now saying. Mayor Forstater is one of the leading gender critical people in the UK. She isn't one of these idiots who just says stuff. She's thought about her position. She's like got advanced gender critical apologetics. She has rubbish positions. She still has logical inconsistencies. For example, she couldn't give a definition of biological sex which made any sense. I think she would probably go for chromosomes because she thinks like Castor Semenya is a man. Anyway, she has basically said the same thing. She's calling it the trans man gotcha. And here is the person, like some people, she's using examples saying, oh, doesn't that mean that trans men should have to use the women's spaces? And she says, the answer is no. The Equality Act exemptions mean that both sex discrimination and gender reassignment discrimination prohibitions are disapplied to service provider and can lawfully exclude both. They don't have to, but they can. A woman who identifies as a man should be in a women's prison and risk assessed as female in a public space. Oh God, it's hard to read when they say everything upside down. Doesn't want to. There are often unisex options. Not being allowed into the men's by rule does not mean you have the right to go into the ladies, and vice versa. That may seem unfair, but these are life choices people make. If you make extreme efforts to look like a man, don't be surprised if you're denied entrance to the ladies. And vice versa. If you make extreme efforts to look like a woman, don't be surprised if you're denied entrance to the men's. This is also what the Equality and Human Rights Commission has been saying. This is what probably is going to be in their guidance. This is what the court ruled. Basically, we want to ban trans women from women's spaces and men's spaces. And we want to ban trans men from women's spaces and men's spaces. Oh, yeah, we can make a third option, which is like down the hall for all trans people, whether you're men, women, or whatever. Who cares? Just mingle amongst yourselves. You're subhuman to us, so it doesn't actually matter if there's any kind of sexism there at all. As long as the cis people have their own cis-only spaces. That is literally what they're creating here. It's what Mayor Forstater wants. Trans bad is the underlying value here. Like, me and her are in agreement on the gender critical position here. The difference is I think it's immoral and horrible and hateful, and she doesn't. And the reason for that is I think trans people are people, and she doesn't. Like, that's it. It's like, this is a value different. And like the rank and file gender critical grunts who send you death threats or whatever, they will contradict this all the time. You'll get one of them in 1 minute will say, of course I will allow any trans men into a woman's space because they are my sisters, or something garbage like that. And then the next minute you show them a picture of a trans man and they'll be like, that's a man, get them out. And you'll be like, oh, you just contradicted yourself. They don't care. They don't care about contradicting themselves. That's not an important part of their worldview, being logically consistent. If they cared about being logically consistent, they would be skeptics. They would inevitably become feminists and end up at the trans rights position. Like, that's where you get to. You don't get there instantly, always. It can take a while, but that is where you get to. If you don't care about, like, if consistency is a fucking burden, like, it can be. Sometimes you think something or you have some gut feeling, and then someone points out that it's logically contradictory with something else you've said or done. Man, like, I've had that a few times in my life. And as how I got to the position of supporting gay rights, it's then how I got to the position of supporting women's rights, it's then how I got to the position of supporting trans rights, and then there's then how I came out in that order. But it's stressful. It's time consuming. It's a lot of work to like reevaluate your whole system. It often knocks down all these other dominoes, like, and then you get to a position where someone will like ask you your view on something and you're like, I just don't know because I haven't resolved this yet and I don't have enough information, and you sound like an idiot and you backtracked on something. Like, being consistent is hard work and it is a burden. It's the morally correct thing to do, and I couldn't do it. I can't help wanting to be consistent, even when it leads to things that feel immoral to me. When I first got into talking about trans rights, I went proper nosedive into the gender critical position to see if it was true or not. And some of the things they said at first on the surface seemed to make sense. And I was like, man, it feels like I'm I'm coming to a conclusion, or at least some of the conclusion is pointing in the direction of a position I feel is immoral. But if that's true, then that's just going to have to be the position I take. I carried on delving into it and found out that actually it's all a big contradictory mess. But which was turned out good for me this time. But maybe there are some things that are consistent which are not morally nice. But gender criticals don't care about that. They don't care about trans bad is the top position. It's their basic premise, and anything else will spring out from that. And if anything ever contradicts that, then it is wrong. And it doesn't matter if they hold two mutually exclusive positions at once, because as long as trans bad is true, all the rest, who cares? So the trans man gotcha, I know where it's coming from, and it may be to cis people who aren't like overtly transphobic, they're not gender critical, they're just normal people. Maybe if you point that out, they'll be like, oh yeah, that doesn't really work, does it? And that's fine. I'm not saying you can never say that, like the classic posting pictures of trans men and being like, where should they be? That's not always terrible. It's good for passers-by. But like, if you think you're going to get someone like Mayor Forstater with this, like, she's one step ahead of you, because she is already openly saying all trans people should be just banned from public spaces. She doesn't give a fuck. Like, they don't care. So you just have to be aware of that. She's not an outlier. She's not like a fringe thinker. She like represents the core of the gender critical movement. No gender critical is gonna like come for her. So yeah, if you're trying to explain something to someone, that's fine. If you think you're dunking on one of these more like alpha tier gender criticals, like, the way that you dunk on them is to show other people that their views are immoral. What this will mean is that trans people are just second-class citizens. They can't go to the men's, they can't go to the women's. They might say, oh, there could be third spaces. There are almost never third spaces. Nowhere is building third spaces. It'll just mean trans people can't go to the toilet. I mean, like if they worked in a pub, they couldn't go to the toilet while they're at work. If they have a 12-hour shift, then get fucked. So that would obviously mean they couldn't work there. So then trans people are excluded from society. This is the kind of thing you need to push back against them, not just think that some kind of picture of a trans man is going to work as a dunk. She doesn't care. She doesn't want any trans people in society. So yeah, I hope that addresses the position. So let's talk about, we've got to do what you can do section. What's the next best one I can talk about? We'll do one more thing, and then we'll do what you can do, and then we'll call it a day. Oh man, I'm just gonna have to cover some of this next week. Okay, let's talk about some gender criticals some more. So we were just talking about Mayor Forstater, who's one of the main gender criticals. Obviously, J.K. Rowling is one, but also Kelly J. Keen Minshaw, or Posey Parker. I think she's less relevant now than she used to be, but she used to be like, for a while she was like their Trump, where she said things that some of them weren't so keen to have said out loud, but they couldn't ever disavow her because they all agreed with her. But for a while she was like one of the most relevant gender critical people. I think her little tour of New Zealand really just ruined her reputation. But anyway, she has declared victory and has pivoted. So she said, you'll notice we've included a commitment to highlight the dangers of illegal immigration for women and girls in our new manifesto. So this is Party of Women, which at one point had one councillor and then they left to join Reform. This is her party. At the bottom she signs it her name. Like, this is her thing. So they're talking about migration and the safety of women and girls. Migration policy must be shaped by truth, transparency and responsibility. We will ensure that all decisions around immigration and asylum take into account the impact on women's safety, particularly in housing, and the practice of housing single men with women. Like, require full sex disaggregated data on migrants. When large numbers of illegal migrants are settled in towns without proper planning, oversight, or vetting, the safety of local women and girls can be seriously compromised. Women often report feeling less safe walking alone. Like, this is the standard right-wing, like, Republican style illegal immigrants. If you're American, you might be like, oh yeah, we've heard all this before. It's not really a thing. Like, I know that every single politician in America has, like, the word illegals on, like, the speed dial. Like, they just say illegals all the time. It's not really... People here talk about small boat crossings and asylum seekers who they think shouldn't be here and stuff like that. They don't really talk about illegal migrants. It's not really a thing. I mean, I guess because we're an island, but, like, people do turn up here and, like, overstay their visa or whatever, and you could technically say they're here illegally, but, like, it's not really... I don't know. I feel like this is trying to invoke American culture wars. Anyway, this is, like, a new thing. Women must be permitted to talk about this without fear of being accused racist or bigoted. Like, this is the same playbook. This is exactly what she did about trans people. Women must be permitted to talk about this without fear of being accused to be transphobic. Like, cut and paste, same stuff. Now talking about immigrants that allow unvetted men. Just the way in which they talk about immigrants is the way they talk about trans people. This isn't like a shock. This isn't a surprise. She's not the only one. So here we have Jess Gill, Agenda Critical, saying, "We've won the battle against trans ideology." So they're declaring victory, which could be a good thing if, from trans people's point of view, if they get obsessed with something else, at least they won't be obsessed with us anymore. It doesn't affect their lives. Hopefully they'll leave us alone. But it's obviously bad that these people are just, like, horrible people in general, and they just always have to be attacking someone. They have to be putting people in their place. They have to be, like, enforcing hierarchies and binaries. That's like what they exist to do. So she's saying, now it is essential that gender critical community speaks up about the dangers of mass immigration. Women and girls are being raped and harassed across the country. If you truly care about women's safety, you need to speak out against this. And then they've got, like, secure our borders, put our women first. God, that phrase always makes me feel ill. 1 in 4 sex crimes are committed by foreign nationals. It's just the standard, like, fear-mongering about immigrants. But, like, what betrays this as not just people with concerns is when they say things like, when will our women come first? Which ones are our women? Like, are these my women because I'm British and they think I'm a man? No. No one's, like, who's are? Like, are they, am I their women? Like, women don't belong to people. This, like, our women thing is bullshit. Why should... If you think that immigrant men are a danger to women, what about immigrant women? Do you not also care about them? Doesn't seem to be a thing that you care about at all. Why are you saying our women? You could say, when will women come first? That's a fine thing to say, and it's like a feminist thing that people say, and it isn't necessarily anti-immigrant, isn't necessarily anti-trans, because trans people say that, and migrants who are feminists will also say that. But when you say, when will our women come first, suddenly it sounds really cringe at best, and a bit red flag as to what your motivations are. I don't think this will be the last of the gender critical movement pivoting. They obviously want to keep the energy that they have and momentum and, like, pick on their next target. So I do think that it's kind of relevant to this is, so there's these 2 really good articles. I'll put them in the description. One is writing about the UK court ruling from a Irish perspective, and one is writing about it from the New Zealand perspective. And Ireland and New Zealand both have historic relationships with England and the UK. we done a bit of colonization. And both, like, I didn't really think about it from this angle from before, but both of these articles, the authors have separately pointed out that one of the reasons that transphobia is so prevalent in the UK when it isn't in even other English-speaking countries, and the way in which it is, it's even worse than in the US, where they have, like, Hitler Part 2 in power. Like, here it is crazy how from right to left everyone is just anti-trans, or all the political parties in the media, at least the people in power are anti-trans. The people on the streets aren't. But they point out that it's like an action of colonialism to always have to maintain binaries in everything across the board. You always have to have, like, these are people and that's their people. We are the colonizers, they are the colonized. That means we can commit horrific human rights abuses to them, and you don't need to worry about us committing them to you because you're of a different class. And the fact that they can move you from one class to the other or whatever, you're just not allowed to think about that. But certainly the way that, like, the English treated the Irish for hundreds of years, absolutely horrific, but importantly dehumanized and othered them. Like, it these are, like, different people. They're like heathens or, you know, savages or whatever. And it's not like, oh, there's this sliding scale of how civilized a person is. It's literally like, we are civilized, they are not. And you have to constantly maintain this binary. And they say in this article is actually really good. It's pointing out how the Supreme Court ruling is in, like, direct conflict with European data protection laws. But they're also pointing out how enforcing these binaries is, like, a very British thing to do. And they're saying that how for a time the idea that someone could be both Irish and English at the same time was, like, a huge point of argument, because how could you be both? Because you're either one or the other. You're either oppressed or you're the oppressor. And that is how the gender criticals view sex and gender. And, you know, it's not like Britain today is the same as it was in its colonial era, but it's not like these attitudes and way in which our society is built and stuff just disappear. People still have the British Empire in mind quite a lot. I do think it contributed towards Brexit, and it's shaped our institutions. Our legal system is like 1,000 years old, so it's gonna result in loads of, like, forced classifications. It's like when they split up Africa and they just, like, drew borders on the map with a ruler, and they just cut through, like, communities and banged two, like, ethnic groups that hate each other together and all this kind of stuff, as they don't care. But what they do care about is segregating and, like, classifying things in the simplest way possible. And it's the same as what they've done with like, race, and it's the same as what they've done with religion and stuff, but it's also the same with what they've done with sex, where they've just been like, we're drawing a border here. It doesn't matter if people are in the middle, they can't exist. They, you know, they, like, officially don't exist, and you have to be in one to the other. You can't transverse it. Like, it's very how they treat everything. So when you buy into this way of thinking, then you're going to think that way about everything. And this is what we mean when we say, like, the gender critical movement radicalizes people to the far right, because this is a far right way of thinking, and it justifies violence against people by othering them. I mean, it's just like the story as old as time. Anyway, that's the last thing we're going to do. We're just going to not quickly. No, we're going to go through at a normal pace what you can do. I think oh, we're talking about independence here. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I support the people in the regions affected to make their decisions whether they want to be independent or not. If Ireland wants to reunite, then that is not my position to oppose them. If Scotland wants to become its own country, that's not my position to oppose it. Yeah, That's my position. I'm not super knowledgeable about it, but anyway, I think it's important to get some energy from this and to do something about it and find out what can you do about this Supreme Court ruling. We aren't totally hopeless. We aren't totally helpless. We aren't powerless. It might feel like that way. We don't have systemic power. We don't have politicians. We don't have judges. We don't have billionaires. But what we do have is humans. We have like the truth and community on our side in a way that the bigots don't. Like, look at this. So, only days after the Supreme Court ruling, there was a bunch of protests around the country. And the one in London had, I think they were saying, had over 30,000 people. Look at, this is a huge amount of people who turned up with like days' notice. I couldn't go because I wasn't in the country at this time. I'm sure there were loads of people I would have loved to have gone. I'm sure there were loads of people who wanted to go who couldn't. So these are just the people who were able to drop everything and attend a protest at a moment's notice. When the gender criticals had their biggest ever protest, they'd been planning it for months, and they had like, I think it was like 200, 150 people or something turned up. It's kind of depressing to see that many people. But it was all of the fucking celebrity gender criticals. It was like the who's who. They'd flown in from all around the country and stuff to be at this one protest. But it doesn't look anything like this. And this wasn't the only one. They were in Bristol, they were in Manchester, they were like across the whole country. And like protests do stuff. Peaceful protests change the world. They don't always change the world, but they can. So I think we need to know what we can do so you feel like you've got some power, and so that you can turn some of this fear into defiance and determination and do something. Let's do something. You need to do something. We're out of the time where you can stick your head in the sand and hope this goes away, because it's not going to go away unless we do something about it. But we now have like a unique opportunity where people are more aware of this than ever. People are more angry about this than ever, and we can capture that and do something. So it is time to step up, says this person. True. So here we have an article. There's two articles here from What the Trans. I'm going to put all these in the description so you can please go and look. I think at the bare minimum, you should be informed about this. The first thing you can do, I've done this in order of like easiness. What the Trans here have compiled all of the petitions on the official government website at the moment related to trans people. It's all compiled here. Some of these, for example, allow trans people to self-identify their gender. This has 115,000 signatures. Parliament has to debate this. There's no reason why this number can't go up higher. What this does is it represents political pressure. When the government sees, like, there are loads of these petitions. Like the next one, this one's almost about to hit 100,000 too. 69, nice. We can easily make this hit 100,000. If the government suddenly has to debate like 5, 6 pro-trans things back to back, they will see that there's a lot of public pressure to support trans rights. Sure, it's going to be full of all the transphobes saying the most horrific things you've ever heard, and the government's going to come up with these like pathetic, like, we support the Supreme Court ruling, like responses. But that doesn't mean they don't feel the political pressure. This is so easy. You can go through and you can go in the description of this video and you can click and you can sign all of these if you live in the UK. Easy. Takes you 5 minutes. I like at minimum you need to be doing something like this. But also, What the Trans have very helpfully compiled all of the protests going on. Maybe there's one in a city near you. There's one in Bristol, for example, this Saturday at 11 o'clock. But they're all round. And if you... Oh, there's 2 in Bristol? Interesting. Maybe they're maybe the same one. But anyway, if you don't have a protest in your area, you can organize one. Maybe contact What the Trans and say, I don't know how to organize a protest. And they can put you in contact with someone who's contacted them on how to organize a protest. There's no reason why we can't have loads more. There's a bunch of fundraisers that you can contribute to. Turn up to a protest. It makes a difference. It doesn't just make a difference politically, though it can do. And I think that's important. But also, it can make a difference to you. It can make you feel inspired. If you go and you're stood and there is like 30,000 people around you, it makes you feel so not alone. And you might meet people there. You'll come away feeling inspired that you can make a difference. And that energy is what you can turn into something else and do more. But also it shows the people around you, like, if all these people hadn't turned up, we'd have a protest like the Gender Criticals with 150 people in it, and it'd be depressing. You'd be like, is that it? But no, because all these people, like, not all these people here are trans. No way. Most of them are cis. And they've said, I'm going to spend my time turning up just to show solidarity to trans people. Incredible. Like, all these people are amazing. And yeah, it's good to do. This is another thing. It's very easy to do. It doesn't have to cost you anything unless you have to take time off work. Look after yourself first. But yeah. The next thing I think you can do, signing petitions, easy. Turning up to a protest, not always easy, but easy for some people. You can be informed. The media, obviously, is pretty garbage for trans people in the UK. If you, like, analyses from other countries, like the ones we were looking at earlier from Ireland and New Zealand, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other ones, they're probably decent. But reading analyses by trans people who are like legal experts or campaigning experts, who are themselves affected by this, that is like the best way to be informed, because you will actually get a realistic analysis of this, rather than the BBC being like, no one's won, everyone still has human rights, no one should panic. Like, fuck off. The best one I recommend at the moment is this one on Queer AF by Jess Thompson, who is a legal person, legal researcher and journalist, but is qualified in law and has read through the judgment and done an analysis of it. Their article is very good. You can be informed about this. You could probably learn more about it from reading this than you can listening to me, because I got most of my information from them and some other sources. So there's also the Good Law Project have done an article about it, written from a cis person who is like professionally a legal person, which is also good to be informed about. Like, it's good to inform yourself, and also if someone who's your friend goes, so what's happening, you can just send them this article. And like, getting informed, even just knowing what's going on, it makes it so much better. So you're able to, like, when they say, oh, they're trying to treat them as their biological sex, you can be like, oh, I know this. I read this in an article. I heard Katie talking about this. You can be like, no, not biological sex, birth sex. They want to take away their rights, and they want to make it so they don't have protection from sexism. And they'll be like, well, actually, trans people still have protection in the Equality Act. And you can be like, no, they have protection from transphobia, not from sexism. So now I understand this, and I can make this better argument. You can change people's minds. The next thing, and this is, I don't want to make this sound hard. This isn't hard. This is quite an easy thing, but it's a little bit more effort than clicking on a thing or reading a thing. I think it's very important that everyone here, everyone listening, writes to some government officials and apply some pressure. You shouldn't look at this as a write to your MP and hopefully they're nice and they'll give you a nice response. You need to put on the pressure and be like, this is not acceptable. I'm your constituent and I am demanding you do something about this. It can be a bit intimidating, but there's a whole bunch of resources here. Trans Legal Project have got a quite detailed, if you want to write a personal, custom letter specifically targeted to your MP. You can write down what you're thinking, what you're feeling. That is great. That is the best kind. Maybe you're not a good writer though, and you're intimidated. Hear from the ex-director of Stonewall has written like a template that you can use. You can edit it, or you can even just copy and paste it to send it to your MP. Here, Transactual have pointed out that you can write to your MP. You can go on like theyworkforus.com or whatever and see which MP you have, and you can even just say, you could literally just be like, hello, I am someone, I am your constituent, this is my address and postcode, because you need to include that. I am appalled and disgusted at the recent Supreme Court ruling. I want you to defend trans rights. That is fine. That is a letter that applies some pressure. They will read it and they'll be like, another one. I've got another message about trans people. Another one. Got like, the gender criticals write all the time. And there are way fewer of them than there are of us. But they are, obviously it doesn't affect them. They're obsessed with this. They are not stressed by it. It's very easy for them to do. Lots of them are like independently wealthy and don't have a job. So they've got all the time in the world to do this. But we have the, like, this affects us. You need the fire. We need to like just write to them and show that there's more pressure. If everyone at this protest wrote a letter to their MP and to the Prime Minister every single week, the pressure would be enormous. They wouldn't be able to ignore it. And that's what Transactional is saying here. We want you to write to the Prime Minister. You can also write to him, not just your MP. Tell him about the Supreme Court ruling. We heard last week that the anti-trans lot write to Sir Keir very regularly. Some write at least once a week, and that is all he is hearing. The anti-trans lot think they're doing well if they get a couple of hundred out on the streets. They really think they're speaking for the people. Last weekend, we saw tens of thousands across the country take a break from the Easter weekend to say no, not in our name. So we need you to show Sir Keir that he's got the numbers wrong. It should be like, you only have to write 1,000 characters max here. You can write way less. You can, like, they've got some guidelines on how to do this here. Set it in, write it in your calendar. I'm going to write to Keir Starmer about trans rights every single Monday morning. And I'm going to say, I demand that you treat trans people fairly. Something like that. It doesn't have to be major. You do have to be factually true. Don't exaggerate. You can write how it makes you feel. You have to be polite. Transactional has some good guidance here. I just think it's so important. We need to apply the pressure. They need to know that they've gone too far. You can't just be a nihilist and sit and do nothing about this, because the gender criticals are doing something about this. And obviously Keir Starmer has no opinions. He's not Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservative Party, like, hates life itself. She's like cartoon evil. Keir Starmer is like a robot that's been badly programmed. If we apply enough pressure, he'll be back on the trans women are women, I support LGBT rights train in no time. Like, he's just making calculations, which is pathetic. Like, it's amoral. It's immoral to be that amoral, but still, you can make. He's the kind of person who you can actually change their position. Someone saying here, so don't address it to dear Keith Stormfront. No, I don't think that they will take you seriously. And then also Good Law Project and a whole bunch of others. I know that the What the Trans the What the Trans article covers fundraisers, but Good Law Project have a fundraiser. And I'm expecting there to be a whole bunch of court cases over the next 5 to 10 years. And we're going to need... I moved here. Am I even moving? I don't know. We're going to need law firms that are willing to take these cases. So if you have money, donating to this kind of thing is important for the future of, like, what we can do legally. Anyway, don't feel like you can't do anything. We can do something. Even if you just write an angry email to Keir Starmer, polite but angry email, that is something. It's applying pressure. It will take you 5 minutes. It will take you longer worrying about doing it. Just whip up the guidance from one of these things and link in the description and be like, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on this, max. Set a timer. As soon as 5 minutes are up, click send. And just get on with your day. And just do that every Monday. Send your MP a thing. Ring them up. Like, be a thorn in their side. It does make a difference. And just reach out to each other. Not just to me. And just remember that, like, we're all in this together. This is going to affect all trans people, and there are a lot of us, and there's no reason why we have to be steamrolled. You know, civil rights movements take sacrifice and hard work and determination, but in the end, we have science on our side, and we have clearly the moral position. So yeah, we just got to keep going. I hope the stream has helped you lot. It's helped me. It's been quite long. Thanks for sticking around for 3 hours. Yeah, energy is now depleted. Let me just see if any more super chats come in. Thank you very much for all the kind ones you've sent so far. No, we've not had any more. No worries. That's amazing. Thank you for all the kind ones you've sent in so far. Did I see a video of Starmer getting kicked out of a pub? We're not closing the stream if that's true. Hang on. This better not be old news. It's not a lockdown thing, is it? Oh, I thought you meant recently. Mate. Okay. Disappointing. I hope someone kicks him out. I hope he gets kicked out of his local for hating on trans people. But yeah, we're all in this together, everyone. I will see you same time next week. Don't stop living your life. Feel defiant. Summon up the energy that I've trying to communicate here. I promise you can get it. I have it. We're not going down without a fight, and if we go down, we're just getting back up again. Trans people survived the Nazis. We're not going to be beaten by Keith Starmer. Come on. Let's go. Love you all. See you soon.